The FNAF DLC is fast approaching. Kind of. Maybe. But the question we're all left asking is, what exactly will this DLC entail? Will there even be a DLC? At this point, when it comes to FNAF, we have no idea. Mostly because the series is in an incredibly weird place currently. With seemingly no official successor after Scott, where could Steel Wool take the story to have it make more sense? And will that direction involve the game's secret main antagonist, Burntrap? That's what we're exploring today. Just like with any of these possible DLC videos, whether it be about the Choose Your Guardian concept or Glamrock Bonnie's return, we first need to check to see how possible it is with where we end up at the end of the game. Well, as far as we can, since the Pizzaplex, or at least part of it, seemingly gets destroyed at the end of the true ending. So, when we choose to stay, is it possible for Burntrap to have more of an impact? Well, it's not as clear as you might think. See, Burntrap, at this moment, is sat in the FNAF 6 pizzeria that's underneath the Pizzaplex, charging in his charging station. However, he only seems to come out of it when ourselves along with Gregory jump down into the final area. So to make this DLC possible, well, we would have to have him wake up for some other reason. Now technically it's unknown if when we drop down Afton ironically wakes up at the same time or if we triggered it somehow, but given that it's FNAF, I'm guessing that us triggering it is more probable and more in line with what the series story was intended to be. So for this DLC to include him, Afton would need to wake up for some other reason, be it maybe a power surge or something that messed with his power supply or potentially gave him a boost that he needed to get out of the charger early. Now that Afton is out of his charger for whatever reason, assuming that that's where the story goes, what could the possible DLC stories be? Well, I'm guessing that Burntrap would somehow be able to get back into the Pizzaplex, despite Freddy telling Gregory that the elevator would only be good for one trip. But who knows, maybe that's because of Gregory and Freddy's weight combined or something like that. Maybe with just Afton in it, it would be able to make more than one trip, since after all it is how the animatronics were getting down to dig the tunnel in the first place, right? Anyways, Afton probably would get back up and then start roaming around the Pizzaplex, probably corrupting anything that he could. This would probably lead to another ending where we would either defeat Burntrap in the Pizzaplex or then maybe have to lure him back down into the basement. But in my eyes, in my mind, I think that we should have to lure him down to the parts and service room. Mostly because Vanessa told us to come to the main stage once we got into the elevator when trying to escape after you get Roxy's eyes. But if you listen to Vanessa, then go check the stage, there's nothing there for you. It just seems to be a time waster so that Moondrop has a better chance of getting you. But in my eyes, this seems like more of a game mechanic thing than an in-game thing. Like in the game universe, all he would need to do to catch you is just make it to you instead of waiting until it's exactly 1 hour. So there would have to be some reason that she called you there in the first place, right? Well, maybe it's because that's where Burntrap was, and now we gotta bring him down to parts and service to dismantle him and end his spree for good. Maybe we can get some main antagonist action where the animatronics roaming the Pizzaplex are instead replaced with the main villains of Burntrap and Vanny. Kind of like Nightmare Fredbear, Nightmare, or Nightmarion style, since those characters also replaced all of the villains in FNAF 4 when they were out. This would definitely make Vanny and Burntrap seem more powerful and important than the other animatronics, especially if this only happened once we destroyed all three, since then we would assume that they were kind of tossed aside or forgotten since they didn't really work anymore. And I think that this would also help Burntrap be more menacing, because honestly, looking at him, this is the scariest design for Afton yet. This is the most terrifying version of Springtrap that we have ever had, and we don't actually have to or get to interact with him directly. We don't have a reason to really be scared of him. He doesn't chase us, he doesn't have any real power over us, we burn him from a distance through monitors while pressing buttons, and he only tries to take control over Freddy instead of coming after us, which is what helped us think of this character as a waste. But having him chase us around the Pizzaplex would be an excellent way of making him more unique and terrifying, especially if periodically he would cause us to be forced out of Freddy while trying to take him over, and the only way that we could save Freddy would be maybe to press another button at a save station, or maybe try to activate a save station station or something like that. Something that could possibly jam Afton's frequency or signal or something along those lines. Making Afton a bigger villain would definitely be a better way to go in my eyes, because this man was underused and really kind of wasted in this way. Especially if they do decide to kill him off permanently, since now he's just sentient code after having his soul burnt out of FNAF 6's fire. But having him chase us around the Pizzaplex and making the Freddy mech useless at times and really just being a horrifying antagonist would really help sell how terrifying this version was intended to be, and something I feel should have been in the base game, since, you know, he's the most iconic character in the entirety of the FNAF series, you know, purple guy, the main killer, something that was teased in the very first trailer and then yet maybe had 5 minutes of screen time, unless you're bad at the game like I am, and then in that case he had like 30 minutes to an hour of screen time. And don't even get me started on how horrible his death was, if that was even a death. Killing this man off screen is probably the rudest thing I think Scott could do to me. Like, I want to see this man, and this man being William, die. I want to be the one who causes it. I want to see the light leave his eyes. I want to see that last bit of code float into the air with his demonic purple eyes and then dissipate. Okay, I want to watch him suffer. It's the least that he deserves. Plus, with Burntrap and Vanny roaming the Pizzaplex, maybe we could actually figure out what happened to those other missing kids that potentially drew us to the Pizzaplex to begin with. I mean, Vanny says in the first trailer that they're supposed to be our friends, right? Like, I don't know, maybe she got to Gregory's orphanage, or like kind of like raided it with a bunch of animatronics. Man, like a World of Warcraft raid, but with animatronics. I don't know. Like, maybe this is the way that Vanny's room above Phaser Blast would be open for closer inspection without the Phaser Blast ending button. Maybe there's an additional secret room or duffel bag or like a present with some story lore that points to what really happened to those kids, and then we can actually go and try and figure it out. If they were killed maybe, or kidnapped, or used to fuel Afton. I mean, this could be a really good way for the story to really establish itself, since, you know, the game was released unfinished despite being a couple years late. Maybe something like this was always intended, but since there were so many delays, we had to deal with an underused and hardly terrifying antagonist despite the ability to make him so much more. But then again, maybe I'm just enthusiastic and expecting too much from these games, which may or may not be a bad thing. There we have it, friends. Will we see Burntrap in the FNAF Security Breach DLC? I honestly think that it's possible, and it would make much more sense than any other character we've talked about. And I hope that we get more with this character, because he's the first version of Afton that actually scares me. Like, if that chased me, I'd actually be scared to play this game. Recently, there have been several ideas of various Security Breach DLC. Some of them good, some of them not so good. However, while yes, something like the Choose Your Guardian DLC would be cool, that's not the only option. So today, we discuss whether or not we're likely to see the appearance of Glamrock Bonnie in the FNAF Security Breach DLC. Whatever the DLC ends up being. So, let's do it. Firstly, based off of what we're expressly told in-game, it could actually be possible. All we really know is that Bonnie ended up going into Monty Golf around 4 AM, and then that was the last place he was seen. Quote from the duffel bag. Security report, 12:24 AM. Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row, heading east towards the atrium. 2:40 AM. Bonnie enters the East Arcade. 4:12 AM. Bonnie enters Monty Golf. That's the last of a repaired Bonnie that we ended up seeing, since in another bag we learned, quote, with Bonnie out of commission, we are making Monty the new bass player. Parts and service has already done the proper adjustments. This could be a good thing. Monty could be even more popular than Bonnie. Which, in combination to the fact that Bonnie was last seen in Monty Golf, suggests that Monty is the culprit behind Bonnie's destruction. Which is odd, in my opinion, because like we know Monty loves smashing things, and like that's not the weird part about this. My thought is, where was Monty chilling before he moved into Rockstar Row? Like, we don't see any real living quarters in Monty Golf, and the only other animatronics that we see outside of the core 4 is the daycare attendant who has his own room above the ball pit. So, where could Monty have been staying if not in Rockstar Row? Anyway, if Monty is to blame for the destruction of Bonnie, we could see Bonnie come back in the DLC. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be really to get revenge on Monty, since we see that Monty does indeed face justice. At least, justice if he was guilty for the crimes. And if not, then it was just destruction. There is another theory, however, that could counter this point if it's true. The idea that Glamrock Bonnie's endo was used to create the new body that Afton inhabits in the true ending, Burn Trap. Now, we've covered this in another video, link to that is in the iCard, but in that video we came to the conclusion that the entire endo wasn't used, since the shoulders on Burn Trap aren't wide enough compared to the male Glamrock endos. And the fact that Afton's muscle fibers, or nerves, again, still not quite sure what they are still connected, would prove that it's the old suit. But there are sections where the fibers are blocked, like on the left foot and left arm. Both things that he was missing, or were more damaged at the time, while in his scrap trap form, seemingly suggesting that perhaps these specific parts came from Glamrock Bonnie instead of the whole endoskeleton. Maybe they were the only parts that they could use after Monty had his fun, maybe they cut Monty off from destroying the rest of him, hence why he starts smashing his green room. We're not sure, and frankly the latter is just speculation, but it's still interesting. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me. But I think I might have found a way to make it work. Like I said, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. But if this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, again, it would need to have broader shoulders, and actually it would need to be shorter. Unless they're like using the female endo for Bonnie, which wouldn't really make sense, so I don't think that they would, especially if they're gonna give Bonnie shoulder pads. But I mean, like, even if we scale them so they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same way, and I'm comparing to like an actual endo, not the Glamrock Bonnie fan art, they still don't line up. And I mean, there are similarities between the two, of course, but there aren't enough where I can even call this above 50%. There are also issues of, again, the muscles being woven throughout the body. If it was just the head, I would understand, since they could have just put the old head on a new endo body, but with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's too intricate to have been placed there. Even if they were, they would be dangling. They would just be hanging out, unless they had been stuck there, like, with super glue. Because, like, they were deep in there, because, you know, he was shoved full of machine parts. So yeah, if Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of the body bits. So yeah, I'm gonna go with they added the arm and the leg on after the fact. But what would that mean for Glamrock Bonnie? Well, it would mean that if decommissioning Bonnie was a part of Vanny's plan to resurrect Afton, there would really be no Bonnie available that you could bring back, since he would really just be decommissioned. And while the other animatronics do come back, losing a leg and an arm is worse than your legs, your eyes, or just being smashed, since he wouldn't really be able to hop around on one leg despite being a bunny, and since he only had one arm, he wouldn't really be able to crawl like Monty does. So, I mean, I suppose the DLC could instead just be replacing Monty with Glamrock Bonnie, but that's achievable with mods, so there isn't really a point to making that a paid DLC, since we would all just opt into modding the game for that experience. Plus, certainly the model they use for Bonnie wouldn't end up being the one added to the mod instead of the current one. So at this point, we'd need a solid DLC to actually make it worth it. With that being said, however, Bonnie being decommissioned might actually impact his presence in the game, but not to this story, since the DLC could be, like I've suggested before in other videos, a series of missions that involve us investigating his disappearance, possibly as a favor to Freddy, since he really seemed to miss Bonnie. Like, he was pretty sad when he was saying that there's no bunny in this pizzaplex, not anymore. That was my Freddy impression. Maybe it would even be because Freddy was already investigating it or something like that, saying that he knows Monty's been giving him side-eye and wanted to know if that Monty would be coming after Freddy next. Since after all, Monty is stronger than Freddy, at least until we break Monty's brains in with a giant bucket filled with balls, which is a total hazard, by the way. I mean, like, come on. The giant bucket that we used to crush Monty is such a issue for health and safety for both employees and for customers. Because, like, if a 6-year-old kid with a 4-year-old's body can use it to destroy an animatronic, how safe is it going to be for literally anyone else? Like, what's the point of the bucket anyway? Like, is it supposed to contain water? Because, like, when it falls on Monty, it breaks the catwalk that we're on. And honestly, water, especially in that quantity, is going to be a lot heavier than some ball pit balls filled with air. Seriously, who the living hell thought that this was going to be a good idea? Or like, how have they not gotten fined for it yet? Or like, how have they not fixed it if they have gotten fined? Yeah, there are guardrails on the catwalk, but that doesn't matter if there's a giant bucket that can destroy the catwalk that you're standing on and then cause you to fall to your death. Especially when falling that distance just like severed Monty's legs from his torso. Anyway, sorry, rant aside, maybe once Freddy has Monty's hands, we're able to investigate the rest of what happened to Bonnie. Maybe we get into Monty's green room and then kind of like suss out what went wrong. And no, that was not an Among Us joke, despite me constantly making Among Us jokes about this game because Gregory is sus, he vented. But like, maybe in the end, we would find Bonnie's casing with a missing arm and a missing leg, and then we would know for certain that I'm right. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? Really? I'm not sure. Like, a lot of people seemingly want to see Bonnie in this game, so much so that they are replacing Monty using mods, but also the idea for the Choose Your Guardian DLC is also very popular, and perhaps even more popular than the others. However, since we know DLCs to be canon add-ons, I'm guessing that a Bonnie investigation would be more likely than switching up the robot who protects us, since honestly, the whole Bonnie thing has less lore implications in the long run. Having someone other than Freddy protect us just seems like it would be too messy, especially with the fact that we would have to steal the other bits from the animatronics, and if we pick Roxy, then we have her eyes the entire game, which is kind of cheating. But like, you know, you get it? You do understand what I mean here? Like, I like the idea, but it's probably just gonna have to be a mod instead of actual canon DLC, okay? I hate to say it, even though I say it every time I talk about this mod. At 10, Ruin. We know that the main title of the DLC is going to be Ruin. Now, whether this will be referencing my opinion of the series or the actual state of the Pizzaplex is unknown, but based on the poster, it's possibly both, because the Pizzaplex looks absolutely destroyed. The Freddy statue from the lobby is in pieces, and there is plenty of rubble all over the ground, and you can see the walls next to the escalators are actually pretty banged up. It's not clear if this is exactly how the lobby will look, since this is just an illustration, not a screenshot from the game, but it is still possible. They could design the damage around this poster, or they could have taken a screenshot and then had someone illustrate it instead, which is entirely possible. But given that this is going to be released in 2023, I doubt that they have stuff made properly for it. They may still be working out the storyline at this stage. And at 9, Free. The name of the DLC may be Ruin, but I'm damn glad it won't ruin my wallet. Especially when the main game was oddly enough in ruins and still cost me $50. And this was before I started buying cheap frozen meals to feed myself, so I was pretty broke. But honestly, I'm pretty glad that this DLC is free, especially with the amount of mods that are probably going to come from it. And it's also probably an attempted apology from Steel Wool since, like I said, the original game was so busted and unfinished when it originally came out. Did you know that despite being incomplete, the original game uncompressed was 86 gigabytes? That's a bigger game size than Skyrim, for God's sakes. That's around the game size, or like a file size, or maybe even a little more than Grand Theft Auto 5. That's absolutely insane. And now it's around 62 uncompressed, which is nicer, and it's 41 compressed. But still, goddamn, that's a lot for not that big of a game when you really think about it. And at 8, 2023. Yes, as I said earlier, the DLC will not be releasing until 2023, which is unfortunate, but it could actually be a good thing. Firstly, it gives me at least another 8 months of DLC themed content before it actually releases, if it is released in January and then the hype dies down for it. But it could also mean that the DLC will be even bigger and better than any previous one, like adding just a couple of more nightmare animatronics or a couple of more levels. However, this also raises the question of of is this the case, or are they just taking their sweet time because all of this is a free DLC? Like, can we really expect to play something huge for free? I doubt it. Like, the only reason it might be free though is because it's affiliated with Scott. But after Scott stepping down, I don't really know how Steelwool would handle this kind of thing if they were doing it on their own, so I can't really say for sure. In its 7 Vanny Cam, we can also see 6 monitors on the poster which have multiple images of security cameras and Gregory on them. Across the 6 monitors, there are 4 total images that appear, with the bottom 2 being the odd ones out, and the 4 above that being 2 different images. One of Gregory looking surprised, and another of Vanny looking at the security camera that's glitching out. Very reminiscent of the iconic Bigfoot image that's very blurry, where he's walking like this. And I think that this is actually one of Scott's clever tricks, like how he used the keypad in Sister Location to tell us that Crying Child and FNAF 4 take place in 1983. I think that Scott or Steelwool is doing the same thing with this poster. By glitching Vanny out on screen, they're showing us that either A, Vanny was the entity that Gregory was talking to that was mentioned in the therapy tapes, or B, that Gregory having his vision glitch out when she is nearby is due to Gregory being a robot. It could be either, but it could also be both, considering how these are both next to pictures of Gregory looking surprised, and they're on both sides of the screen. 2 pictures, 2 eyes. This is the real 2-eye theory. In its 6, brightness. As always, the first thing you do when you see any FNAF promo art or any image that's related to FNAF at all, you go and brighten it to find more details or maybe even some secrets. And the first thing that I noticed is that there aren't any question marks on this poster. Thank God. But there's also quite a few things that got revealed to me. Firstly, at the top there are actually 2 windows on the poster instead of the one that just seems to show up in the original. These windows also look like they are angry eyes, which could indicate an overarching villain. There are also a very faint set of eyes in the top right corner as well, aside not including the ones on the left that are clearly visible, but the ones on the right could just be an anomaly since they are very faint. And I also see that the girl in the middle doesn't have any color on her aside from her shoes. More on that later. And the floor also cuts off at the bottom, but the rocks on top of them don't. Mostly because at this point the ground has pretty much faded into black, but the rocks would still kind of be visible. But seriously, this girl is in black and white. Halfway through, and at number 5, collapse. One of the big questions we, or at the very least I, had after Security Breach was what part of the Pizzaplex collapsed after the cave-in during the true ending. And it was really up in the air whether it was the entire Pizzaplex or just Roxy's Raceway. I guess they kinda left it that way depending on what they wanted to do. But this poster and the title confirms that the Pizzaplex itself is in ruins. The whole place is a ruin. The giant Freddy statue from the lobby is destroyed and there's rubble everywhere. There are still some questions, of course, like it is just an illustration after all. How's the rest of the Pizzaplex doing, for instance? What happened to the other animatronics? What's the main goal of this DLC? But while the latter may have been answered thanks to another detail from the poster, I don't think we'll have any answers for a while. The DLC doesn't come out until next year, which is absolutely insane, but at least it's free. In at 4, eyes. And while Gregory's eyes may be robotic, there's another set that I would like to point out in this Security Breach Ruins poster. The red eyes in the top left corner of the screen. Now, this is very clearly Vanny, but since I've seen a few people get confused by this, let me explain why. The eyes are red, which we only really see Vanny have, since Burntrap's eyes glow purple, and the animatronic eyes don't really glow. We also know that Vanny might have been able to survive the collapse due to her being controlled by Afton, but also because she was able to be on the roof before us when the fire starts in the rooftop ending. I mean, she gets pushed off the roof by Freddy, but we know that she was up there before us somehow, so I'm sure that she would have found a way around a collapse. Plus, if she's on the security cameras and the other showcased person is Gregory, who we know is alive, it just makes sense for Vanny to be alive. Plus again, red eyes. And they're in a similar position to where Vanny was placed in her first poster appearance as the Shadow. You know, like the one where Freddy's rocking out and then there's like a bunny chick with a knife that we were like, who's that? Yeah, it's in roughly the same area. It's not in the same place exactly, but it's in the same vicinity. Getting close to the end, and number 3, Busted Chica. Now, when I make jokes about rearranging Chica's guts, this is not what I meant. Yes, that's right, my main girl Chica also makes an appearance on this poster as probably the most resilient animatronic in the group, because she's still kicking, despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then a building, and still having most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed and cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted due to possibly the fire we were using to kill Burntrap, or maybe just because a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left. Remember that, don't make my mistake. And she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing for her midriff and her right arm is gone, but other than that, she's fairly intact, at least compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone, spilt frosting all over her face. I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But ultimately, in at number 2, Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Save Them minigame from the earlier FNAF games. I'm pretty sure it's FNAF 2. You can see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor with the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in green lettering. This seems to me to indicate that we may have a potential plot idea brewing where we need to save Gregory and Freddy after the collapse of the Pizzaplex, but we know that Gregory and Freddy sit on the hill in the final shot alone in the true ending, meaning that if we do end up having to save him, our player character will most likely die in the process. This also means that we will not be playing as Gregory, but more on that in a moment. The underscore here could also be another indication of Gregory being a robot, but it could also potentially just be a reference to a file within the main game or within the DLC that could contain some secret information. But I have no idea if that's true. That's just speculation for the time being. I'm gonna have to look in through the actual security breach game files before the game comes out to see if there was an update that added one of those files, since underscores are primarily used for putting spaces in file names without actually needing spaces. Or it just could be that we need help in this case. Finally, in at number 1, Blondie. We do also see a new character on this poster, one we have never seen before. The little blonde girl holding the flashlight that is illuminating this entire scene. She's short, blonde, and wearing light-up Skechers like the girl boss she is. But she is also presumably our player character, given that she is front and center. Now, as to whether we are looking for Gregory or if Gregory is looking for us is one thing, but I have a slightly wild idea that could help explain. The pigtails is very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair. And while we may not be able to see her face, I think that she may also have green eyes, because anyone with blonde hair makes me instantly think of Elizabeth Afton, who gets grabbed by Baby in 1983 and goes on to possess the animatronic. Now, given that we've made the comparisons of Gregory to Crying Child in the past, and the very familiar nature of this blonde girl, I think I have a reason why all these children have gone missing. Because they look like the original Afton children. Think about it. This girl looks a lot like the middle silhouette from the original Missing Children's article in the worst ending for Security Breach. And the rest of these children look similar to each other, at least using their silhouettes, because that's all we really have. Plus, look at her light up Skechers, okay? Red and purple lights. I'm sorry, but when have we seen purple and it hasn't been an indication of Afton? Plus, the red is exactly like Vanny's eyes. This has to be one of the 9 missing children, right? That got released thanks to the collapse of the Pizzaplex? Like, come on. That has to be it. The most popular FNAF DLC concept at the moment seems to be the Choose Your Guardian DLC. The idea behind this, brought to us by Reddit user space_bear, was that you'd play through the story of Security Breach again, but this time choose which animatronic would come to defend you instead of Glamrock Freddy. I'm assuming you could also choose Glamrock Freddy again, just because. While most of the game would remain the same if you were with Monty, with the mechanics of like hiding inside the chest cavity anyway, I'm sure that there would be some issues if it came to Roxy or Chica, which would result in them having to carry you onto their back. In the comments, it was also suggested that this could be used as a way to make the animatronics faster, but you wouldn't be safe from the other animatronics since they could still see you, because you know, you're on their shoulders. But how could these characters work if this was actually put into the game? That's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. Now, as I just mentioned, Roxy's body isn't really all that big. And while Gregory is able to fit his entire body in a hole that is just over 14 inches tall in Glamrock Freddy, I still don't know how that works, I don't think that he'd be able to fit himself inside of Roxy's tiny torso. But considering how she's the fastest animatronic, sprinting at you when she sees you or even hears you after her destruction, it's safe to say that maybe the mechanic would instead be riding on her shoulders, which would make for better movement speed since she wouldn't have to worry about crushing you while you're inside, but also adding more vulnerability since the other animatronics would be able to see you on her and would follow. This would also make for way too much fan art of Gregory riding Roxy, more than there already is, honestly. You search up Glamrock and you see Get Your Glam Rocks Off, and I wish I was kidding. But the question is, how would Roxy be the one who glitches instead of Freddy? Since the story seems to be, at least currently, that Freddy glitches because the spirit of Michael senses a little brother in Gregory, or maybe even senses that Gregory is his little bro. But assuming that that's just a theory, How would they work this into the actual, like, canon? Like, Gregory can't really hide inside Roxy's stomach after all, so how would he be able to get into her green room? My best guess would be something having to do with her insecurities. Maybe Gregory overheard her and then followed her into the green room to help her. Or maybe since he still needs to be scared of Vanessa, he turns Roxy against Vanessa by saying that the security guard is calling her ugly and saying that Chica is the prettier animatronic. At least Roxy would be down for destroying the other animatronics in that case, as long as she gets to stay pretty. Monty's gameplay would seemingly be the most like Freddy's, with his wider torso allowing for Gregory to hide inside. But really, I can't see this character being sympathetic towards a kid at all. Like, he's got a very rockstar attitude, and I'd only see him helping Gregory if Gregory was doing stuff for Monty, you know? Like, if Monty was decommissioned or something by Vanessa for destroying his green room, and then Gregory got him working again. That's really the only way I would see these two working together, although this would come with the benefit of Monty's claws already working. Unless for story and gameplay reasons they gave that upgrade to Freddy and said that he needed it to hold on to the microphone better or something, or maybe like turn it on, something like that. Either way, I don't think Monty would mind that, especially since he would get to destroy Freddy. Something that we see from both the van ending and in the last level of Monty Golf, he's more than fine with doing. He might not want to hurt Chica or Roxy because of course every great rock star needs their backup singers, but he would certainly help you with Freddy. Which brings up the problem of where Freddy's boss battle would be. Obviously he'd be the other option between Chica and Roxy, since Roxy's eyes are too overpowered to keep for the long haul. However, Freddy seemingly doesn't have his own area. Chica has the kitchen, which is where her battle takes place because she loves pizza, but she also has Mazer Size. Monty has a mini golf course, and Roxy has a racetrack. So where would Freddy have his boss battle? My best guess would actually be Phaser Blast. Sure, we have to avoid Chica while we play, but assuming we're playing with someone else as our guardian, it would make the most sense for Freddy to be here. Plus, the disassemble ending could be very useful here, since we could use the staff bots Vanny uses in that ending as like our way of destroying Freddy. Maybe he'd end up knocking the remote down or something, and then we could take it and say disassemble Freddy, something like that. That might cause some issues with the whole Chica thing, because then you have to go to the Bonnie Bowl to get the whole Monty mix to crush Chica. But I mean, we could move Monty's mix into Monty Golf, because I feel like that would also make sense. Chica would have to operate in much the same way as Roxy would in this fictional scenario, with us most likely being carried around on her shoulders. And while she may not be as much of a sprinter as Roxy, she can certainly move quickly. If we're giving difficulties to the animatronics, I think that Chica would definitely be like the hard mode out of all of these, since she doesn't really have any unique abilities. Maybe the voice box would be included, but that's something needed to unlock the main boss room, so it would kind of break the story and make it way easier. So maybe instead they could work it out so Freddy would have like a good voice box that we could steal, so that maybe Chica would instead soothe the animatronics, or maybe after we damage him, his voice box goes from good to broken and then it just screeches like the original. But other than that, I don't really know how this would work. Like, I don't know how this would be different. Like, maybe instead of the whole screeching Chica's ability, she'd be able to move us around in a hiding spot, like if it had wheels, since there are more wheels than doors. I mean, since Chica loves food, seeing her move around garbage or recycling bins may not be an unusual thing. Like, maybe she's just bringing it back to snack on in her green room. So if we were hiding in one of the various bins, maybe while inside we could call her over by pushing Q, and she would end up like grabbing on to the hiding spot and kind of like pushing us around, as long as there was enough space for it. So obviously like smaller ones would be more maneuverable but also more suspicious. I don't know. Obviously other animatronics could still inspect the hiding spot while she's holding it, and if Vanessa saw her she would absolutely inspect it. But other than that, I think that the whole mechanic where she pushes you around would be an interesting addition, and it would make Chica a unique guardian and set her apart from Roxy, since at that point they were kind of the same thing. Although it would certainly make things interesting if we're all like, oh yeah, mommy Chica's pushing around Gregory in a stroller. Oh no. Obviously, if this were the actual DLC, Freddy would just end up replacing whatever animatronic was guarding you within the story. So if you chose Roxy, he would have the eyes, etc. Like, they'd have to find a reason for it, but I mean, like, in my humble opinion, it seems wrong if Freddy isn't the one protecting you. But this absolutely would be a fun DLC concept. But hey, if they don't do it, we can always mod it into the game, right? Just like swap a couple models around and then you're good to go. There are also some seriously dope voice actors out there who love the series, and I'm sure they would want to help out. Or maybe some voice actors are looking to add stuff into their portfolio so they can get more work, who would be willing to help. I mean, like, maybe the Freddy voice could be fairly easy. TikTok has been doing it as a trend, and if TikTok can do it, I'm sure we can do it for a mod. So like, maybe it's not such a long shot for a mod after all, like I originally thought. But why am I suggesting a mod though? Because unfortunately, I don't think that this DLC concept is going to get made, okay? I hate to say it, but while it is an incredible and extremely fun idea, the DLC that they do add to this game would most likely be canon to the main series of games. In fact, we haven't had a main series game that wasn't canon. And despite the last DLC claiming it was nothing more than a festive holiday themed add-on with no hidden intent or purpose, we know better than that. And making it so that any of these characters could protect you would probably ruin the story in some aspects and make the next game harder to set up. And while FNAF 4's Halloween DLC at the time that it came out was claimed to be non-canon with the exception of Nightmare Balloon Boy, Nightmarion and Nightmare Mangle did end up making it into Ultimate Custom Night, which would mean that Crying Child would have seen them. So eventually, even if they weren't at the time, they did end up becoming canon eventually. Meaning that since this would mess up at least like the story that we understand from the games, with the exception of like the canon ending, but like then again, it's still kind of weird. If we're right or even on the right track about what the story is, I don't think that this would honestly be possible. It would honestly kind of come out of nowhere. It would kind of come out of left field story-wise, unless they end up making it a DLC because everyone is asking for it rather than a DLC that will actually help answer some of the questions we have from the game, since they might want to keep things vague and open-ended for whoever is taking over next. But I guess then again, we'll see when they announce a DLC, if they announce a DLC. I'd still prefer a daytime mode though, or even secure and neutralize from the DLC top 10 list. The girl in the center of the FNAF Security Breach Ruins poster is most likely our player character for the game, considering how Gregory seems to be stuck since the words "help me" are written on a monitor showing his face. But who is this mysterious main character? It's a question that not many have an answer to, but I think I have a pretty solid one. So that's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. Firstly, let's go over a theory that I've been seeing that I wanted to stop in its tracks. I mean, it's probably not gonna happen, because this video is probably gonna get like 6,000 views max, but either way, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who goes on to possess Chica. Susie has been dead for a long time once the game takes place, being dead for over 50 years or so. So there is literally no possible way that this girl could be Susie. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we released her spirit in the Happiest Day minigame, and she has only possessed Chica as far as we've known. Some assume that the Happiest Day minigame takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true. Considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that when FNAF 3 is over we get the good ending, to me that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place in FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria FNAF 6 does not have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released because, well, they had already been dealt with. So about this girl, let's go over some evidence about what we see on the poster. Firstly, there is her blonde hair. We know that it's blonde thanks to the rim lighting on the character being blonde at her hair, and while yes it may seem stupid, I think that the general consensus is that this girl is blonde. While rim lighting is the color of the light that it is instead of the color of the person, it also isn't going to be yellow on a darker surface, so this means that her hair is not black, eliminating Cassidy from the race. So this is not the spirit that was possessing Golden Freddy, or who a good amount of people consider the one you should not have killed, aka the Vengeful Spirit from Ultimate Custom Night. The girl in the middle is also wearing a jacket and what appears to be a denim skirt, fingerless gloves, white socks, and sneakers that light up Skechers style. Hashtag not sponsored, but like Skechers, hit me up, we can probably work something out. Now this may not be out of the ordinary to any of you, but this instantly reminded me of someone from a previous game. As I did mention this in another video, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, I get that she's been dead for longer than Susie, but just hear me out, okay? See, when we were playing Sister Location, we ended up getting the cutscene where Elizabeth is grabbed and killed by Baby, turning Baby's eye color from blue to green. This outfit that this mysterious girl is wearing is nearly identical to the one that Elizabeth was wearing in that minigame, aside from the light up shoes that wouldn't be available for another decade by real world standards. However, in FNAF in 1983, they also had discs that emitted sounds that altered the appearance of things in your brain. So a couple of light up shoes 10 years early doesn't really seem like that much of a stretch. The skirt is also identical to the skirt that Elizabeth wears in that cutscene, and the jacket could easily be covering up a similar styled shirt, which could be pushing the idea that Gregory having 2 stripes on his shirt is definitely important. But I want to talk about the color. You see, there is no real color on this girl. Bumping up the saturation, brightness, or vibrance actually shows that this girl is drawn in black and white. Have you ever heard of the saying, lack of evidence is sometimes itself evidence? Like maybe you're dealing with a professional killer, or that these thieves are overly cautious. Well, I think that this is a similar situation. Think about it. Why would they draw this girl in black and white? I mean, yeah, sure, she's backlit, but being backlit doesn't make you grayscale. This is an indication that the color of this girl's clothing can possibly mean something. Maybe Scott thought that he was too subtle with Gregory, only putting 2 stripes on his shirt. So this time he went for the full outfit, including color. Speaking of color, there's also the matter of her shoes. The only part of her that isn't rimlet that has color. The color of her lights being purple and red. Purple obviously being a nod to William Afton, aka the Purple Guy, a character so synonymous with purple that I can't wear my favorite shirt on this channel now without being called a serial killer. And red, while misleading, actually does tie back to Elizabeth Afton in the form of Baby. Her entire outfit was red, including her bright red hair, and I mean, like, it seems fairly reasonable to assume that this girl has at least a connection to the Afton family, although there is another explanation for the red on her shoes. Give me a minute. Given that the other 2 humans on this screen, Vanny and Gregory, are also connected to the Aftons, we can guess that this is the case with the blonde girl as well. However, I don't think that the girl herself is Elizabeth. Here's the wow moment, alright? I think that this girl is possessed by Elizabeth. Yeah, I know, right? Hear me out. I know I said that that's not possible with Susie, but that's because we freed her, alright? There are 7 faces on the Blob, the secret antagonist of Security Breach. 4 of them have lit red eyes, and 2 of them don't. The 4 that do are Naked Endo, FNAF 1 Bonnie, FNAF 1 Chica, and Mangle, all of which are somehow present in some form or another in the Pizzaplex. Mangle is Roxy, Bonnie was Bonnie, Chica was Chica, and we fight multiple endos on multiple occasions. The 2 that aren't present, however, don't have their eyes lit up, Baby and the puppet. But we know that fire doesn't do anything to Remnant, clearly. I mean, Afton has burned, what, 3 times now, and none have stuck? And in another video, we determined that the spirits can only be freed when they get their unfinished business resolved, like the missing children in Happiest Day. Baby also doesn't seem too happy about burning in FNAF 6. She in fact says that she wants to make her daddy proud, and dying to fire would really do the opposite considering how many he's survived. So, much like we suspect Michael could have, Elizabeth could have swapped bodies as well, into one of the missing children that Vanny took. Hell, that could have been why Vanny took them in the first place. Afton wanted his daughter to have a vessel, hence why this one looks so much like Elizabeth's original body. This also explains why there is red on her shoes, because it's meant to represent the glowing red eyes that would be in the animatronic head. Remember, it's damn hard to kill an Afton for good, and in the books, Baby is really the one orchestrating everything, at least when it comes to the Afton amalgamation. Especially since this girl is facing away, her eyes could also be green. And I have a feeling that throughout the game we will see her eyes either flip-flop or start off blue and become green or something like that. Or, what I think would be the coolest way to do this would be having her eyes green normally, like if we see it in like a camera or something, but be blue in a mirror. So, here's how I think the story went. After the FNAF 6 fire, William gets a hold of Vanny in order to get his body back. He creates, through the company, a new location on top of the old one to hide his deeds, and then he sets himself free. In the process, though, he notices that his daughter's spirit is also stuck. Since this is the first time they've been together since he put her in the basement of sister location, he decides to help her out, and causes Vanny to start abducting kids who look like his in an effort to rebuild his former family. Given that his youngest son is either still possessing him or now loose to the elements as well, the blonde girl is then kidnapped and Elizabeth finds her suitable host, so she's possessed. And now she follows Vanessa around in an effort to keep an eye on her and remind her that Afton is always watching. She starts manipulating her through encoded chats and messages, and hacks the FNAF AR animatronics to cause them to malfunction, and gets Vanessa promoted to security guard to keep an even closer eye on her. As a part of her observations, she starts therapy just like Vanessa does, and despite her telling the truth about her family history, it doesn't line up with the girl that she's possessed. Hence the one therapist calling out Client 46 for it, and her explanation about what happened to her family seeming to lack emotion, since after all she watched it happen as Baby instead of experiencing it as an actual child. After the collapse, she is either brought back by Afton requesting help with himself, or possibly also to help secure the vessel for Crying Child, who escaped along with a Michael possessed Glamrock Freddy. To me, this seems like a game about reuniting. Reuniting with lost brothers, lost hope, but most of all, reuniting a family. The Afton family. After all, we have all the characters now. The misguided father whose misdeeds cost him everything, his loyal daughter who wants to see her family back, the mother who now agrees and is a part of the father's plan, even if unwillingly so, and the sons, one too scared to do anything, and the older brother who helps him beat the circle that their father created, who rights their wrongs and makes up for their family's sins. What do you think? I feel like I'm pretty spot on with this one and that this could be a great launching point for the next part of the series, but let me know what you think down below. The girl in the center of the FNAF Security Breach Ruins poster is most likely our player character for the DLC, considering how Gregory seems to be stuck since, you know, the words "help me" are written on a monitor showing his face. But who is this mysterious main character? It's a question that not many have an answer to, but I think I might have another one. So that's what we're exploring in today's video. Let's do it. Last time I came to the conclusion that this mysterious girl is one of this round's missing children that got possessed by Elizabeth, and while I do still firmly believe that, this got me thinking, who else could it possibly be? We asked you loyal subscribers on a community post, and the overwhelming conclusion was that the majority of you are wrong. Okay, just kidding. A lot of you though seem to think that this could be Vanessa as a ghost. And despite the fact that Vanny's eyes are on the poster, I think that you might actually be onto something. So let's talk about it. Although I just need to put this out there, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who possesses Chica, okay? Susie has been dead for a very long time when this game takes place, being dead over 50 years or so, and while that doesn't really matter in the context of FNAF, there's still no way it could be. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we released Susie's spirit in the Happiest Day minigame. Some assume that this takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true, considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that's when FNAF 3 is over and we get the good ending. So to me, that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place around the time of FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria from FNAF 6 didn't have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released, because they had already been dealt with. So in regards to this theory, the first thing I need to disprove is that it's impossible, since Vanny's eyes are in the corner. But just because we see some faded eyes, it doesn't mean that a spirit cannot be separate from a body. I mean, look at Afton, for example. This man was code that possessed a human while his body was stuck in an underground pizzeria. So there is a precedent for their body being around without their soul. The issue in my mind comes around when we see that since Vanny's eyes are glowing, her body is operational, which kinda shoots this theory between the eyes until you remember that there are multiple things possessing Vanny's body. One version of Glitchtrap's code and then Vanessa herself. So we can go one of two ways with this now. The fact that Vanny's body may solely be Glitchtrap now, or the fact that Glitchtrap is still operating in Vanessa, but Burntrap is also Afton. He's back as Afton, okay? Either way, there are two versions of Afton in operation right now. One of them is coded and the other is possibly not, but we can't really be sure. And William isn't the only person to have a coded version. I mean, remember Princess Quest? The game designed to keep Vanessa at bay while William wreaks havoc as Vanny? I mean, the Princess Quest ending, otherwise known as the best ending, is the only ending to have 3 stars. It had some significance, but what? It's a question we've been asking ever since Security Breach ended. Another one is what happened to the Princess Quest game machines located around the Pizzaplex. It seems reasonable that at the very least the one in Roxy's salon was destroyed, and if the Pizzaplex is in ruins, then the others must have been destroyed too, right? Well, if that is the case, what happens to Vanessa's spirit? Like, is it released, or does it fade away into nothing? It's not fading away, not with unfinished business still afoot. The spirit of Vanessa had to go somewhere, but where could it go? Well, this could be some random girl that Vanessa just grabbed off the street or that was walking by, or it could still be one of the missing children that was trapped in the building. Either way, whoever they are, it's really of little consequence if this is really Vanessa possessing them. Okay, the only thing that matters in this context is that Vanessa's possessing them, not who the kid is, I'm guessing. The precedent is set in this universe where one person can possess multiple things if one version that is possessing something is coded and the other is a spirit. So this is definitely possible. The character on the poster is also actually completely grayscale, aside from the rim lighting thanks to her flashlight and the color color of her lights on the shoes that she's wearing. These are also colored purple and red, colors that in this game specifically are linked to William because it's purple. I mean, I can't even wear a shirt on this channel now without being called the purple guy. So yeah, purple equals Afton, Burn Trap, William, whatever. And then Vanny with her giant glowing red eyes are also on this poster, okay? It's like they wanted us to make this connection. But if they wanted us to make the connection, does that mean that this is all intentional, or is it mostly just a red herring or MacGuffin to keep us away from the real story? That's for you to debate in the comments. The girl in the center of the FNAF Security Breach Ruins poster is most likely our player character for the game, considering how Gregory seems to be stuck since, you know, the words "help me" are on a monitor in front of his face. But who is this mysterious main character? It's a question that we've been trying to answer multiple times, but there is one theory that is certainly interesting that I wanted to take a look at more. That's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. Now first, your instinct may be that this is impossible, okay? And honestly, that was my first instinct too. I mean, Susie's been dead since like 1985 with the missing children's incident, and she ends up possessing Chica, who is then set free and happy as a day. So like, how is it even remotely possible? Well, some say that the happiest day minigame that sets Susie free really takes place at the very end of the timeline, no matter when that ends up being, meaning that at the time of Security Breach, none of the original 5 animatronics have actually been released, which means that if we go off the fact that this girl is possessed, this is entirely possible. I mean, Susie is the first of the missing children, and definitely seemingly the most important one, given the fact that we see her as a kid in the Fruity Maze minigame's reflection. And I mean, even if the one you should not have killed is Cassidy, it's just a blown out version of her face. But the puppet is present for the Happiest Day minigame, and they get released in FNAF 6, right? There's one key detail, however, that really makes me unsure. Something that's been in the back of my brain for a while, but it may make a few people mad because it involves using the novels. In the original novel trilogy, starting with the Silver Eyes, the Funtime animatronics are injected with remnant made from the original 5 possessed animatronics, meaning that if remnant does indeed contain part of the soul instead of just being metal that once had a soul, the original 5, despite being set free in Happiest Day, no matter when it takes place, could still have the slightest bit of spirit form in the main world, I guess. Which could also explain why Molten Freddy had to show up along with Scrap Baby, also known as Elizabeth, in FNAF 6, unless we just assume that there was a slight bit of Elizabeth remaining inanimate after she left, or if we assume that Henry wanted to get rid of all traces of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, or all things that Afton created, which at that point also included his son. That's a lot of assumptions. So without assuming anything, but also while using the books to get some further context, which some people don't like, it is possible that after they burned in FNAF 6, much like Afton, Susie's spirit was set loose. Not free, like it didn't move on, but it was just loose in the atmosphere, willing to grab onto whatever it could. Or that it merged into the blob, and then the fire that Gregory causes that caused the cave-in ended up setting her soul loose again, and then she possessed a person. I don't think that there is really any explanation that could mean that this is Susie's original body. That seems fundamentally impossible. So whoever this is, if she is a character we've already met prior to this game, she would have to be possessed. Unless this is an entirely new character, which is absolutely possible. I mean, it doesn't have to be someone that's already established, obviously, but I mean, it's fun to speculate and theorize nonetheless. Another indication that I've seen a few people point out is that Chica does actually also appear on this poster, which is certainly an interesting choice. I mean, she was certainly the most popular enemy animatronic in this game, and the other animatronics are very out of commission even before the collapse. I mean, Roxy couldn't see, and Monty was split in two. But since we can't really take anything in FNAF at first glance, is this actually meant to indicate the identity of our mystery girl? It's certainly a possibility. I mean, the only ones who really know are Steelwool, Scott, and whoever made the poster. But given Chica's state, I'm guessing that this is just meant to indicate a timeline, that this occurs after the collapse rather than at some other time prior to the game starting, and then maybe they rebuild the Pizzaplex, or maybe even long after it ends. Because I mean, look at her, okay? Chica has got to be probably one of the most resilient animatronics in in the group because she's still kicking despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then having a building land on top of her, and she still has most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed, some of it was cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted, possibly due to the fire we were using to kill Burn Trap, or maybe it's just because like a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed, and then she thought that it was just really hot pizza. I don't know. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left. Remember that, I've made that mistake. And she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing on her midriff and right arm is gone, but other than that, she is still fairly intact. Her endoskeleton is, at the very least, especially compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone spilt frosting all over her face. Yeah, I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But other than that, there aren't really any connections between her and Susie. Probably the most resilient animatronic in the group because, again, she's still kicking. Susie was possessing the yellow Chica, so I feel like this Chica being white is meant to show us that this is not going to be like the same sort of situation. So I don't think that relating this Chica to that Chica or this Chica to Susie is really logical in this case. I think it's a bad idea, okay? No, I guarantee you that this is not going to be Susie, and if it is, I'm going to quit FNAF. Look, yes, she's blonde, and yes, Susie was blonde, but she was also blonde in 1985, okay? It's been like 50 years since the missing children's incident in the games, and the original Chica animatronic was destroyed, and Susie's spirit was released, okay? Happiest Day does not take place at the end of the timeline. The pigtails on this girl are very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair, and while we may not be able to see her face, I feel like it is possible that she does have green eyes, okay? Because anyone with blonde hair instantly makes me think of Elizabeth Afton, not Susie. Since Elizabeth has more impact to the story than Susie, and even in the books, Baby ends up having more of an impact thanks to the Afton amalgam. And considering the blob that got introduced in this game is very much similar to that amalgam, this still makes the most sense to me, okay? But I figured that I'd go through the possibilities in separate videos just for good measure, okay? I'm not sure. Who do you think this little girl is, alright? Do you think it's Elizabeth's spirit? Do you think it's Vanessa's spirit? Do you think it's Susie's spirit? Or just some random stupid kid who wandered into a house of horror? Be sure you let me know down below. I'm still adamant on Elizabeth, but I don't know, maybe it's just a stupid kid. And honestly, you know what, if it's a stupid kid, they deserve it.
Number 10, available on all platforms. This is good news, because it means that no matter where you bought this game, you will be guaranteed this DLC if you want it. But on the other hand, it could be a big part of the reason behind the delay we seem to be feeling or experiencing when it comes to the Rune DLC. I feel like it's been so long. I actually had to be like, oh man, how long ago did this game come out? I had to re-look it up. I forgot. It's so long ago now. Basically, it has been over a year, and we were kind of expecting, I think, that the DLC would be here sooner, perhaps already even. The more platforms a game or DLC is released on, the more time it's probably going to take the game or the content to be completed. This is because each port requires a little bit of tweaks, and these can be more or less tweaks depending on the engine that you're using to build the game initially with, and if that engine is better for PC or console, and if it's not good for one or the other, you know, what level of tweaks are we talking here? Big ones, small ones, what are we talking about? Releasing something on multiple platforms also usually means that one of the platforms at least is going to be a bit janky upon release. Although I feel like glitches in games bother us less now, as we've become accustomed to all games and video game content being some level of buggy upon first release, so, you know, maybe we don't have to worry too much about that, but I don't know, Security Breach was pretty janky. Gonna be real. Alright friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, if you want more FNAF content, let us know by clicking that subscribe button. When you subscribe, we get closer and closer to Rune DLC. Actually, I heard for every time you click subscribe, like you can click it, unclick it, click it again, keep doing that back and forth, a week gets knocked off the Rune DLC timeline, so it'll be here sooner. so click it. Number 9. How many is too many? Speaking of multiple ports across consoles, it's important to note that likely part of the delay for the Rune DLC was thanks to Steel Wool Studios also busting their game developing butts to get us the Xbox version of Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, which actually only came out late last year, if you could believe that. That's right, that's almost a year after the initial release of this game. Sorry friends on Xbox. And the other thing that might cause you some worry to know is that Steel Wool Studios, following their work on Security Breach, is not necessarily prioritizing the Rune DLC, as the studio is actually also working on multiple titles now, having branched out to work on other projects at the same time, so it's not just FNAF, including things like Hello Neighbor 2 DLC and the game Hello Neighbor Search and Rescue. The only good news here is that they have also worked to expand their staff, doubling in size, so that should basically help them, I guess, to work on multiple projects at once and still remain just as, if not more, effective. At least that's what we're hoping for, and I'm sure that's what they're hoping for too, so fingers crossed. Number 8. The protagonist has entered the chat. But who is she? Other than seemingly being the protagonist based on her stance in this poster with her little flashlight, we don't really know who this girl is. Is she Elizabeth Afton like many people claim because they think her hair is blonde? Is it even blonde? And if so, if she is Elizabeth Afton, how is that even possible? Or is she someone totally new? And if so, will we like her more or less than Gregory? Will she be just as sadistic? Will she matter to the lore, or will she just be some random character that doesn't really develop? Also, is Gregory coming back? I mean, he's on the poster too. He's probably coming back. I have more questions than answers for you on this point, and for that, I am sorry. But also, that's kind of just FNAF for you, I suppose. Even when we think we know things, really they are all just theories that we take at face value as facts because, well, I mean, otherwise we'd really know nothing about these games. And also, I mean, that's part of the fun. We like to try to follow the clues and then try to figure out what the facts are or could be plausibly. Something that I think could be true and would explain some of the red coloring perhaps on her shoes as well as the purple is that the little girl could have some connection to Vanessa, aka Vanny. I think that could also be a thing. I don't know if other people have been saying that. I haven't been deep into the theories in a little bit, but I feel like I haven't seen that one yet, so I don't know. If that's new, let me know. If it's not new, let me know who else is saying it, because maybe I should watch their content more, because I'm vibing with that. Number 7. Vertical Slice completed. In an announcement that Steel Wool Studios shared on their site, they mentioned that the process for Security Breach Rune was going well, and that they were moving ahead of schedule. But don't get too excited. They simply stated, and I quote, "We don't have any gameplay details that we're ready to share, but we can talk about where we're at in development. Pursuant to growing our processes, the Security Breach team spent significant time in rigorous pre-production process, focusing on streamlining our ability to construct fun, stable gameplay. So far, this year, we have delivered on our vertical slice milestone earlier than planned and are ahead of schedule for a major upcoming development milestone." What does that mean? What is a vertical slice? A vertical slice, or VC, is basically like a pitch for a game, a concept of a game. This is what game developers use usually to get investors hooked on the game in order to, raise enough funds, collect in the money so that they can then, bring that game to life. So, what does that mean? It simply means that Steel Wool Studios has their concept down. Well, not only that, it was actually completed ahead of schedule. So, while that's, promising to hear, ahead of schedule, we like that, it is a little frightening to know that they reported this in November of 2022, so it's only a few months ago. So, I mean, if that just happened, and I mean, we don't really have a clear timeline for when the VC was completed, admittedly, we might still be pretty far out in terms of design and gameplay features, because, that's a concept. So, we can work with that, it's something, but it's not like, oh, in like 2 weeks it'll be done, just polishing it up. Number 6. It's free? I think this is one of the scariest things I've actually heard about this DLC, and I'm gonna tell you why. I know what you're thinking. Amanda, don't we want this DLC to be free? Isn't that nice? Then we save money, which means we have more money to undoubtedly spend on more video games, yay! And aren't we owed this in some way after Security Breach was not quite as good as we expected? First of all, no one is really ever owed almost anything. You paid for a game, you got a game, if there were parts you didn't like, that's unfortunate, but it doesn't mean anyone actually owes you a thing more than what you got. Unless it was, it may be helplessly broken or unplayable in some way. Then they probably owe you something because you bought a game, you don't really get a game because you can't really play it. Secondly, I'm worried about runes being free because it makes me think it will be shorter than what we're hoping for. And granted, it's been in the works for what feels like forever. I mean, if it releases in December, it'll be like 2 years since the initial release of Security Breach. But what if it's not a whole other additional story? What if it's like just cosmetics somehow or something ridiculous? Or like a small like extra chapter? Like what if it's 10 minutes of game? I don't know. When things are free, it just makes me nervous that it's because the product can't actually be considered worth paying for. Because like, why are you giving this to me for free? Like, I'm just a person, someone's like, this is free. I'm like, what's wrong with it? I don't know. I've been burned too many times from free content and items, I guess. Number 5, a new foe, or perhaps a new ally. Some have taken to using the poster to basically decode what this game is really about, when it takes place, who's in it, who's the main character, who are all of the characters. Of course, at the end of the day, it's just a poster, so I mean, it's kind of hard to accept all of the wild theories and all of the things people seem to be coming up with to answer these questions, but one that I do feel has some merit and that we can classify as kind of a no on some level is the new enemy that people are spotting in the poster. In the top left corner of the promotional poster, if you haven't seen this yet, there are 2 glowing red eyes, or I mean what appear to be red eyes. We don't really know if they are, but they definitely look like that. Now while Vanny also has red eyes, so did the blob we saw at the end of the game, and many are thinking that these eyes seem to kind of line up with the seemingly amalgamated blob entity we saw a little bit more than Vanny, which I also personally see. Interesting counterpoint though to this being the potential main enemy of the next game, what if this is actually our ally in the game? I mean, after all, the blob did kind of save our butts in the end in Security Breach, whether intentionally or simply because it had its own vendetta against Afton. I'd be curious to know why specifically. If it is our enemy, it like wants to be our enemy, especially if we're playing as like a nameless girl who maybe has no connection to anything. Unless maybe this girl happens to be an Afton, and then, I mean, maybe. I mean, did she do something terrible though? She's just a girl, so I don't know. More sadistic than Gregory, she is just like William Afton, murdering people left and right. Goodness. Number 4, 2023. Okay, this isn't too scary admittedly. I mean, this does mean we can probably expect the game later this year, at some point, right? Well, what if that isn't true? After all, dates get pushed back all the time, especially when you only have a month and a year expected release date for video game projects. And this is a project that we don't even have both of those things for as of yet. All we know is the year, 2023. I also just feel like not having even a month guideline means that it's likely we're not going to see this game for a while, or this DLC for a while. Even if it's not pushed to next year, we could have to wait until maybe the end of 2023 in December to see the game. I mean, if we only know it's being released this year, it could be released, keep in mind, as late as December 31st, 2023, because that would still be 2023. And that honestly feels right now, that feels really far away. Like it was just December a minute ago, so we got a ways to go. Maybe not scary, but definitely a little bit depressing to think about when it comes to just how little we know in terms of this DLC's release date, or you know, lack thereof, I guess I should say. Number 3, not just a concept. Here is something that is less scary to ease the revelation of where Steel Wool was reported to be at in November with this DLC, and how they basically were just past, you know, that concept stage. They went on to say in their announcement, the vertical slice build was the very first one in my career that was a complete actual VC with functional versions of all the gameplay elements and systems we'd intended to build. Our team is absolutely crushing it, and we couldn't be prouder of them. We're fired up and can't wait to share more with you all. This is more promising because it kind of seems like their VC is more of a realized concept anyways. However, once again, I would take even this moment of brief celebration from Steel Wool's executive producer Ray McCaffrey with a grain of salt, because the fact that a vertical slice exists could also be a sign of danger ahead when it comes to what's going on with the Rune DLC and honestly the game studio, Steel Wool Studios itself. Number 2, disillusionment. A vertical slice isn't just a tool to be used for developers as a guide when they're building the world and creating the game or the DLC. A vertical slice can also be something that's actually requested by investors. In fact, this can happen when investors actually have no real knowledge of the video game industry and what goes, into building a video game more specifically, or when the investors simply don't have a lot of confidence in the project based on the knowledge they do have of the studio and their body of work, or the project in question itself. There's just something about it they don't get. Basically, they're like, we'd like to see more information, like we need a pitch. If this is the case with Rune, and of course, it very well might not be. The VC could, just be for in-house development, or it could be a routine part of their process in relation to their investors. This could be an indicator that either investors are attached to this project who have no clue what is getting made here, or worse, they don't have a lot of confidence in what's being made. So, it's possible. Number 1, silver lining. Despite this being a scary list, I feel like I need to end this on a high note, because at the end of the day, as FNAF fans, we're all hopeful for the continuation of the video game franchise, and we want to see it succeed. Successful adaptations, games, DLC, all of this only means that we have a better chance of getting more and more quality content for years to come. Fingers crossed. So, what I want to add is that although the vertical slice could be something for us to be worried about, generally speaking, it seems for Steel Wool to be something they actively wanted to improve on, because in that same announcement from November 2022 where they updated us a bit, they discussed changes they made as well as things they wanted to personally improve on. One of those things, a major point in fact, seemed to be for them that they wanted to focus on their pre-production process. Now, why is this important to note? Why does that even matter? Interesting story of the security breach game, its plot and the execution of said plot. It's easy to see how this could actually kind of be the result of poor planning actually. Like some of the issues in this game could be because their planning phase wasn't as great as it could have been. Same with some gameplay features such as the vastness of the map, which wasn't really utilized as much as I think we'd all hoped it would be, with whole areas designed and built into the massive mega pizzaplex, but seemingly existing without really having any purpose to serve in the game. Which, you could go there and explore it, but you don't really do stuff there. So, hopefully they're figuring out those kinks.
In a 10, save him. Now, there is a very clear connection between the Ruin poster and the Save Them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on the screen, at least to me, indicates that what we will have to do is save Gregory from whatever situation that he's in, with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make it to that hill that he sits on in the true ending, in the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene, in this case, is just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. That could also just be because it's the true ending and it's canon, but it's currently unclear. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful, but it's possible that our character, whoever she is, will die in the process. I could also be drawing weird connections between things that aren't really linked, but that's always possible when theory crafting, at literally any point, so. In at 9, Robot Gregory. This poster, in my eyes, also helps prove further that Gregory is in fact a robot, since after all we get confirmation that Vanny messes up the cameras, as you can see from the 2 screens that have Vanny on them. They're both glitching out. This is further supported by our last point, because how would Gregory be able to add a help me sign to a screen without being able to access the cameras? Nowhere on our Fastwatch does it say that we can add text, and Freddy clearly doesn't have the ability, since he would have used it during the section where we have to open the doors for him so that we can then be a sussy baka and vent, instead of just, standing there and waving. He could have had text flashing up on screen so that we can see him easily. Multiple people I watched play this had difficulty with this section, okay? Freddy just flashing some text on screen saying I'm here, especially when the player takes a while, would have established that he had this power, but they didn't. So unless they want to somehow retcon that in, it has to be that Gregory's controlling it. Most likely because he's a robot and he can just, tap into the cameras. And at 8, no more Freddy. There is also a possibility that Freddy is destroyed, or that he won't be in this DLC at all thanks to the statue we see on the poster. This poster could be an indication of what happened to Freddy after the Pizzaplex's collapse. I mean, after all, the collapse did destroy Chica, right? So why couldn't it have destroyed Freddy too? Yes, he ends up on the hill with Gregory, but like I said, that could be a dream or a heaven of sorts, or it could be years after the actual ending of the game. We can't really be certain. Or at the very least, the game could be omitting Freddy day, and he won't make an appearance for whatever reason, hence why the statue is destroyed. I mean, like, look at it. This thing is in pieces, but why? There isn't much rubble around it, and the escalator walls are way less damaged than this, so why would the statue have been so heavily damaged if there was nothing that actually hit it? Seems a bit sus if you ask me. And it's 1 year later. With the DLC not releasing until 2023, the question remains of when in the timeline it will take place. Yes, it will take place after the true ending for Security Breach, but how long after the true ending is the question. See, with the state of the animatronics, it seems that it could be later on, and the release date being 2 years after the release of the original game means that it could be linear in the timeline sense, so it could also take place 2 years after the ending. But that would then bring on the question of why is Gregory back there if it's a year or two later? But then we also have to ask who is this girl and where they came from if we're really going to know this answer. So while there are theories, this one specifically coming from Amanda because of the release date, we still don't know for sure until we have some more information. Time to wait another 6 months before another teaser! And it's 6, Chica Graffiti. While zooming in on Chica, like I always do, I did notice that her torso seems to have traces of red on it. Now, what this is in reality is definitely unclear, but it could be graffiti, indicating that this could be later on in the timeline. She could have been decommissioned for a while after being revived for whatever purpose, and maybe some kids got to her and decided to spray paint her. Or, more likely, it's actually pizza sauce. See, brightening the image while basic FNAF at this point is also still helpful, and I used it in the last Ruins video. However, while the red is evident on the normal poster, by brightening you can actually see that there is yellow dripping from Chica's face. And unless Chica started listening to Bear Grylls in order to survive the collapse of the Pizzaplex, I'm pretty sure that it's melted cheese dripping from her mouth, which would also explain the red in tandem. I mean, it could be her beak, but like, we were trying to explain the red, so cheese makes sense. Like I said, it would mean that the red stuff would then be pizza sauce and potentially pepperoni or some other form of meat that the Pizzaplex kitchen would add on pizza. But it could also be blood. Not sure from who, but maybe Chica saved Vanny's life or something. Also, I was at Niagara Comic-Con 2 days ago, and there was a girl dressed as Chica. Didn't know who I was. It was kind of offensive. It was really humbling. Halfway through, into number 5, the FNAF ARG. This was brought up in a recent MatPat FNAF theory, and people are starting to suggest that it's going to be involved in this DLC. The basic idea that the FNAF Fazbear Frights books were originally going to have an ARG that Scott ended up cutting out for whatever reason, and then released part of it in the Felix the Shark book 12. However, I'm here to tell you guys that it's not real, okay? Scott has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want to cross the line between fact and fiction, and that he wants to keep the two worlds separate, probably because FNAF relates so closely to Chuck E. Cheese. And that's also why he wouldn't really make a real FNAF location, okay? He stuck to this so hard that he didn't even make a website for the indie game dev introduced in FNAF VR like he wanted to, because he thought that it would be too fuzzy for the line, okay? So, look. There is no FNAF ARG, okay? If a website is too much, there is no bigger quest here. Last time we thought this, there was a restaurant that got harassed, and a pizzeria owner who just so happened to be named Mike also got harassed. So please, don't go out searching. If there was an ARG, I'm sure Scott would have said something about it, okay? So don't harass anyone, just stick to the games and the game files. Crack open FNAF 3's mobile game if you want to see if there's the image there. Just leave the real world locations and people alone. And at 4, simulation. It's also worth mentioning that there are multiple instances on the poster that feel unfinished. Now, I don't know if this was because the poster was rushed, which has seemingly been a trend with FNAF recently, or because they're simply mistakes, but I wanted to point out in case it has bigger implications. Like when I mentioned the last time we talked about this, the floor at the bottom actually cuts off, but the rocks on top of the floor don't. Mostly because at this point the ground without brightening had mostly faded into black, but the rock was still kind of visible. However, even unbrightened, you can see the clear divide between the tile and just pure black. You can also see that on the left, the floor does the same. And this is very clear in the original poster, okay? I mean, like, there's even a glowing rock sitting at the border. Oh, it's like glowing because it has reflecting light on it, but it also kind of reminds me of when an item is important, so it's highlighted in the game even if it makes it unrealistic. But the most interesting part in my eyes is the tree on the far right. The one in the back next to the escalator. The bottom 2 sections of it are blank. Like, they're just filled in with a black outline and then solid brown color. Like the artist had finished the color blocking and then forgot to finish the tree despite doing the rest of that tree. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but if it is, then could this be pointing to the entire thing being a simulation? Which would then bring up the question of how and who. Like, maybe this is what Vanny is seeing in her head while Glitchtrap was taken over, so that she's still like the good guy in her head, so she's not fighting back against Glitchtrap's control. Or maybe it's Gregory still caught in his dream that started in 1983. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Prisoner. Now time to get to some theories about our blondie in the middle. Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention that she looked an awful lot like the middle silhouette of the 9 children who ended up going missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that point. So the most realistic answer I have is that the missing children weren't actually dead, but they were rather trapped inside the building somewhere. Much like how Vanny in the very first trailer for the game said, "Gregory, your friends are here with me."
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory must have known these children, right? Which explains why he came to the Pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, this is a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who, thanks to the collapse of the Pizzaplex, managed to escape containment. But ultimately, in at number 2, Elizabeth Afton. Okay, this one is a bit wild, but hear me out. I also mentioned last time how both of these kids look like Aftons. Gregory is very clearly meant to at least be an allegory for crying child, okay? The stripes on the shirt, the age, the relationship with Freddy, it was right there in our faces. Whether you believe he is a robot or not, he is at least meant to represent crying child. And now, look at this girl. While she may be in black and white, she is still very clearly blonde. She has pigtails like Baby does, and we all know who Elizabeth ends up possessing. She's wearing a skirt exactly like Elizabeth was wearing in the one time we see her in Sister Location. I mean, if crying child's 2 stripes are enough for a comparison, I think this is more than enough. And then, look at her shoes. The lights are the only thing that has color on them, which is very clearly meant to have our attention. And then those lights are purple and red. Purple very clearly representing William Afton, and while last time I said that the red could be Vanny, Baby is absolutely covered in red. From the clothes to her hair, red is all over that animatronic. Or it could be that this girl is evil, just like how Elizabeth always wants to impress her father. Just saying. It's not the craziest thing this series would have done. Okay, it would have been, okay, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. Or again, they could have just been taken because they look like the kids. And finally, in at number 1, time travel. This one is crazy, I will admit, and it's most definitely not the case, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book called Into the Pit. Remember that one? Where Oswald ends up jumping into a ball pit and somehow leaving 2011 and appearing in 1985 to witness the missing children's incident? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason. And where do we see the first ball pit that wasn't in a pizzeria that was simply meant to lure animatronics around? Oh, would you look at that? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying that time travel has already been established, and considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future or something. There are actually 2 key indicators that point in this direction, at least in my mind. The therapy disc where the therapist calls client 46 out on the lies about their home life, and the fact that when he leaves the Pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. The therapist in the tape says that 46, which I'm still certain is Gregory, has a great home life, but what they told their previous therapist was a lie. But if that is the case and his home life is great, despite saying his parents and him suffered some form of tragedy, how is it that he sleeps in a cardboard box? Like, his home life is great, but he sleeps in a box. Because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened as of when the game takes place, which would mean that this girl could be Gregory's sister who came back to save him when he didn't return. Or he could be lying and instead using the name of someone he knows is a missing child in the future, which is why he can't go home. Or why the therapist describes him as writing down his past as if it was a story. Because it is a story, just not his. In the 10, Into the Pit. This is crazy, okay? I will admit, and it is 100% not what's going to happen, but FNAF has already established time travel as possible in the very first Fazbear Frights book, Into the Pit. Remember where Oswald jumps into a ball pit and then somehow leaves his year, which I predicted was 2011 in a previous video, and then appears in 1985 to witness 5 children getting killed? Yeah, that story wasn't written for no reason, I think. And where do we see the first ball pit that isn't in a simulated pizzeria meant to just attract animatronics and not really kids? The Mega Pizzaplex. I'm just saying, alright, the time travel is already established and technically canon in the FNAF multiverse. And considering how sketchy Gregory is, I wouldn't put it past him from being from the future. There are 2 moments that in my head really solidify this as a possibility, albeit a wild possibility, but a possibility nonetheless. I mean, like the therapist disc where the therapist calls client 46 out about the lies about their home life, and then the fact that when Gregory leaves the Pizzaplex in the worst ending, he sleeps in a cardboard box. Okay, the therapist in one of the tapes says that 46, which I'm still at this point at least kind of thinking is Gregory, had a great home life, but they told their previous therapist that they had a horrible one. But if that is the case and they have a great home life, how is that the case if he's sleeping in a cardboard box? Maybe because it hasn't happened yet. The tragedy where he most likely loses his parents hasn't happened when the game takes place. It happens in the future, which could mean that this girl that we play as could be Gregory's sister who came to save him when he didn't actually come back to their time. It's nuts, but it's possible. Anything is possible with FNAF at this point. In at 9 friends. Now a theory about our little blonde girl in the middle of the poster, alright? Who is she? I made it a point last time to mention how she looked an awful lot like the silhouette of the 9 children who have gone missing due to Vanny, and I still stand by that. So, in my mind, the most realistic answer is that the missing children aren't actually dead. Or at least this time they aren't. That they were instead trapped inside the building somewhere, much like how Vanny in the first trailer says that Gregory, your friends are here with me, or something like that.
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out.
So clearly, Gregory, at least originally, knew these missing children, which explains why he came to the Pizzaplex in the first place, but it doesn't explain how he never mentions them. Either way, it's a very real possibility that this blonde girl is just a missing child who is also one of Gregory's friends. That, thanks to the collapse, managed to escape whatever prison she was stuck in. And it ain't save him. Now, there is a very clear connection between the Ruins poster and the Save Them minigame from FNAF 2. The text on that one screen, at least to me, indicates that we might have to save Gregory from whatever situation he's in with Freddy. Since we know that eventually he does make his way onto the hill that he sits in after the true ending and the Princess Quest ending. However, it could be possible that that scene we see just happens before and then he comes back, although I wouldn't see why he would come back. It's also possible that that's just a dream, since it's more realistic than the other endings. But, I mean, it could just be because the true ending is canon and that's why it's realistic, but you know what? Nothing is clear with FNAF. Obviously, if it's real, we will end up being successful for saving Gregory, but it is possible that we will die in the process. And you know what? Here's hoping. I don't want more children to keep track of. And at 7, save us. What if we're the ones who need help this time around? I mean, we have no idea who this person is and what they're doing, but maybe they're not one of the missing kids and they just also got trapped somehow as well. I mean, it's a question of how they would have gotten in, of course, and like, why are they exploring this place if it's destroyed and they're the size of a 4-year-old as well? But like, still, no idea why she could be in the Pizzaplex, but my job isn't to theorize about why, but about what. This plot may end up being that we have to help Gregory save us so that he can show us the way out. Or the game is just going to be replayed as a new character with Gregory as our guardian telling us how to get around and get out of the Pizzaplex, which might satisfy those of you who wanted the Choose Your Guardian DLC. I said it wasn't going to happen. It just didn't make sense to do, since like it would just be the same game again, but slightly different. And I was right. And at 6, Bonnie's released. And while we may not be choosing our guardian, it's definitely possible that in this whole mess, Bonnie was released from whatever prison he was being held in. Or at least something like that could be possible. I mean, there are plenty of doors that we can only get behind if we had level 10 security clearance, which is impossible within the game. So those doors could have been opened or have just been destroyed in the collapse, which could explain how we get into these sections now that we probably aren't going around trying to collect security badges, if there are any even left remaining. But a security door level 10 would make much more sense since we have no idea what could be behind any of those doors. Maybe they kept Bonnie in some stasis chamber since he's a sentient AI that couldn't really be moved or something. I don't know, okay, it's FNAF. They'll come up with a scenario and a reason and we won't really be able to fight it. That's just how it goes. Halfway through into number 5, antagonist. We've played as the antagonist before, however the player we were was only an antagonist in the next game, not in the game that we were playing, meaning that this time we could be playing as an actual antagonist. I mean, Chica being in the poster either means that there is a connection or we're just being messed with, and recently I think we're always being messed with, so I'm gonna go with that, meaning that this little girl could possibly be Vanny. I mean, we know that Vanny does have a spirit within the building as we see in the rooftop ending, but could we actually be playing as her child spirit? I mean, it's possible. It wouldn't be the wildest thing that FNAF has ever done. Additionally, I mean, we could be the spirit found in Princess Quest because, like, come on, would that really be out of the question? At this point, I'm pretty sure Princess Quest is destroyed, so maybe it released something. It's not out of the question. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible. Okay, there's a difference there. It would explain why she's in black and white unless there's, like, light on her. So, in at 4, Chica's Revenge. Chica being on the poster though is not necessarily just for a distraction. It could be that it is meant to indicate that Chica is the reason all of this is happening. And honestly, after Niagara Falls Comic Con, I wouldn't put it past Chica. That's right, I'm still mad about it. I mean, after all this, it could be some form of twisted revenge for Gregory dismantling her in an attempt to escape originally. So could this girl be a manifestation of Susie, as an attempt to gain our trust and inevitably kill us? Or at least try to, at the very least, because, like, I mean, to be fair, if we think about it, we aren't going to kill Gregory or get Gregory killed, since after all he does still need to make it up to the hill at the end of the Afton ending. So unless that happens and then he comes back, which seems unlikely given the help me text on the monitor and the fact that he just swore he would never do that, I feel like this is kind of possible. So could this all just be a manifestation trying to gain our trust? Probably not, but the more Chica, the happier I am. Usually. Getting close to the end of number 3, Client 46. Could this new blonde girl actually be Client 46? The mysterious therapy client who never speaks, but we all thought was Gregory, or at least some of us, most of us thought was Gregory. I mean, honestly, it could make a lot of sense. It would explain why 46 would be talking to Vanny despite Gregory being afraid of Vanessa. It would explain how they could hack the animatronics but not be able to stop them by hacking them again like Gregory could have. It would explain how their home life was great despite their accounts of the past, since after all, Gregory does end up sleeping in a cardboard box. And it makes a lot more sense than he's a time traveler and the tragedy just hasn't happened yet. It would also explain why we never hear 46 talk, because it's a girl, and it would just make us think that it's Vanny or Vanessa instead of it being someone we hadn't seen before. Client 46 was a kid, as evidenced by multiple recordings, and they would be immune to the deaths of her therapist if she was talking to Vanny, but who could this mysterious girl be? But ultimately, in at number 2, Ghost. While yes, this girl could be 46, it's also possible that she is Elizabeth Afton, either as a ghost, which if she is 46 wouldn't really make sense, or she could be possessed by Elizabeth Afton's spirit. If we take a look at the blob, which does include Circus Baby, her eyes aren't lit anymore, meaning that the spirit is no longer in there. And considering how Afton's body still somehow survived, and we think that Michael managed to make his way into Glamrock Freddy, it would make sense that Elizabeth's spirit would survive as well, especially if she wanted to stick around to keep trying to impress dear old dad. Since in a previous video we came to the conclusion that Remnant can only be burned away if the spirit wants to be set free, or rather the burning doesn't really do anything and they're only released if they get their unfinished business completed, like the original Missing Children in the Happiest Day minigame getting that party. Elizabeth could be sent to gain Gregory's trust and then defeat him like she did in Sister Location, or maybe she's there to find her brother. And finally, in at number 1, Great Escape. The final potential plot would be a great escape story, where this blonde girl has come to the rescue of Gregory or has been released because she was trapped, and now she has to make a break for it while the building collapses around her. Will she save Gregory or will she only save herself? Multiple endings are not out of the question and kind of expected at this point, with one of them, the most difficult seemingly being the true ending, but who knows? Maybe none of these are right and we're all reading into this idea way too much, and our expectations are just going to ruin this DLC for us. That's right, I made the joke. You thought I was done making cringy jokes and puns. Hell to the no. I will always try and make terrible messages and jokes because that's just what I do. No matter where I am, terrible, unrelated, possibly offensive jokes are always being made. And 10 meaningless collectibles. While yes, the collectibles are fun things that you can go around and steal all over the Pizzaplex, I think that a DLC adding more collectibles that don't have any significance is a pretty bad idea. There are plenty of difficult to find collectibles already, so if you're to make more in a DLC, I think that they should actually have some form of meaning with those collectibles. Whether they're references or Easter eggs, it doesn't really matter, but we definitely need some form of meaning because getting all the normal collectibles that in reality are stealables, if you ask me, is already quite the task, especially if you keep the whole like you're unable to save after getting Roxy's eyes thing, because that is just some serious bad juju if you ask me, although nobody really has asked me. We all hate the mechanic, alright? And at 9, repaired animatronics. Considering how the whole point of the game was to destroy these animatronics so that we'd end up wasting enough time for the doors to open, repairing the animatronics in this DLC for whatever reason it might be would be a huge disservice to the game. Like, yeah, you might need them for something, but if that's the case, you shouldn't have to have them repaired. Plenty of different sections in the game use both destroyed and repaired animatronics depending on how you've completed the story. If you destroyed Chica and then go to Phaser Blast after the ending, you can end up having to dance around a destroyed Chica, so forcing repairs on these animatronics just destroys what we spent the entire game doing. We did it illegally, but also considering how the game is past 6 AM and will always be 6 AM no matter how long you play at that point, you can be fairly certain that they would not be able to repair the animatronics in time. And it ain't bug fixes. Okay, now don't get me wrong, this game is in dire need of some serious bug fixes, but I, along with I'm sure everyone else, would be absolutely furious if those bug fixes came in the form of a DLC. At least if the DLC is a separate purchase that we have to make like the Help Wanted DLC was. If I have to pay for bug fixes that I should have already had, there's going to be a problem, because if a game is released unfinished, there needs to be a remedy to that in the form of updates. Easy updates that fix the major issues with the game, like I don't know, falling through the world. And if there is a paywall to get those updates, I think I know a couple of websites that can help me get around that, because in all honesty, that's incredibly messed up if the bug fixes will only be in the DLC. But I don't think Steelwool would do that. I just get worried since they're still working on updates but also still talking DLC. And at 7, daycare. The Moondrop daycare section was certainly a great bit of fun, despite the constant darkness and the demon chasing you. It was strangely like my mind, actually. However, while this section was certainly fun and one of the best moments of the game, I don't really want to repeat it. It took me so long to do properly the first time, so any reason to have to go back into the daycare, whether it be because we dropped something or whatever other reason they'd come up with, I don't want to do it. Do not send me back to the goddamn daycare, or I swear to God. Like, it was fun the first time, but I'd rather not spend another 3 hours nearly ripping my dick off trying to find another generator. I don't want to deal with the daycare attendant at all, if that's possible. Just the fact that the first line as Moondrop is naughty naughty boy, it puts me on edge, especially for a kid who's like the size of a 4-year-old. Not in real life. I'm taller than a 4-year-old, I hope. Like, okay, look, it's just setting off all kinds of radars, alright? And it's 6, post-credits. While yes, I said another ending would be nice in another video, having any post-credit scenes should really be saved for the next full game, especially since we don't know where the next IP owner will be going with this series. So I'd like to leave the endings where they are, and any DLC should take place before the game starts or after 6 AM hits, since 6 AM seems to be the most logical time for any serious change to happen, since employees would be starting to come back and prepare for the day. So things like additional areas or attractions opening would make sense. Basically, the daytime protocols would activate. Or it could be like a DLC starts if you go to the main stage when Vanessa asks you to when you're trying to leave. When you're trying to get to the main doors while the daycare attendant's chasing you and she says, oh, come to the main stage. Yeah, that could do that. And it could start like a whole new story kind of mission with, wait for it, autosaves. That would be amazing. Someone in a recent video also mentioned that there's unused Freddy voice lines that say that the stations got hacked. However, firstly, that means nothing since it's unused, therefore it's not canon. Secondly, it still makes no sense, because if he's able to escape, why have the saved stations? Like, why hack them at all? It doesn't really make sense unless you want to screw with the business, since in the world of the game, the save stations do nothing for Gregory. They only help us in the game sense. Do you get it? Halfway through into number 5, post-game. Honestly, I'm fine with the DLC taking place post-game, and it would make the most sense. However, I don't want to see a post-game DLC where you can't save the entire time. And that's what I fear the most when it comes to Security Breach, okay? If we're getting a whole new section of the game, basically a new game in and of itself, we'd better be able to save throughout it, which Steel Wool might see as actually compromising the intended difficulty of the post-game, so I don't know what they're going to do. I had to put it out there again. If this is going to be some post-game DLC, you need to make sure that saving is allowed, even if the save spots are only available like in the sections pertaining to the DLC while the DLC is active or something like that, because otherwise it's going to be too much of a pain in the ass to actually get through. And I don't know how many people will actually want to play it if it's that way. Rather, they'd probably end up just wanting to watch someone else play it, which is fine if the person you're watching play it is me. And at 4, questions. When we get this DLC, if they do end up making one at least, I don't want to be left with more questions than we had at the end of the main game, alright? Scott loves to clear things up from previous games with the next one, and a DLC is a perfect way to do this. And he did this with FNAF VR and its Curse of Dreadbear DLC, with confirming that Glitch Trap was meant to be Afton. So, if we come out of this DLC with more questions than answers, while in typical FNAF fashion, I'm still not going to be a happy overnight camper. Like, bro, can you just like throw us a bone once and tell us like one of the big mysteries we have, or give us answers for that, like how Gregory and Vanessa know each other seemingly, or if Gregory is a robot, or who Client 46 is. Please, just give me that instead of questions, and I'll be happy. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, time travel. Seeing a giant ball pit for the first time in an actual FNAF game that wasn't when you had to buy it interests me, alright? Specifically because of the Fazbear Frights books and Into the Pit and the story of the same name. Since in that story we see Oswald, who could travel between 2011 and 1985 by jumping into a ball pit in his local pizzeria that actually used to be a Fazbear joint. And honestly, that book being released and then the ball pit appearing in the FNAF game does not seem like a coincidence. So, it could be possible that we see time travel in this DLC, especially if they wanted to relate it back to the books and the Fazbear Frights books. However, this would be an absolutely terrible idea. Okay, I've once said that this could be a great way to change between in-game times. However, the whole day and night mechanic isn't a thing in the game. So unless they introduce that with this time-traveling ball pit, or one of the ball pits being able to time travel, it would be a bit much. And honestly, it would probably ruin the DLC, if that's a thing. So if you're gonna make like a day as well as a night, then okay, I'll allow it, but if you're not introducing that, there's no point in a time-traveling ball pit. And ultimately, in at number 2, more Pizzaplex. Okay, so the Pizzaplex is already pretty damn big. It's confusing to get the places you need to go. There are a couple shortcuts, but it is still difficult to get to certain places. I personally end up going probably the most complicated ways to get back to the main atrium and the like, because I can't be bothered trying to find my way around. But going through the Rockstar row vents to get down to parts and service through Roxy's room is the one way I know works. However, adding more sections to the already confusing Pizzaplex could do more harm than good, and when it comes to something like this, you can't really add a different world space unless you make the story way too complicated. With something like Skyrim, the Forgotten Vale and Solstheim makes sense. However, with FNAF, you can't really have a whole separate area because the whole game takes place in a Pizzaplex and not a specific province of a whole established world. So, more Pizzaplex, while potentially making sense, could end up being counterproductive, especially depending on where we need to go. Maybe use spaces that we've already been in, or add fast travel. And finally, in at number 1, cash grab. The biggest concern that I have with a Security Breach DLC is the possibility of the DLC just really being a cash grab. And while most DLCs could be considered cash grabs, it's really a risk with FNAF in general, especially being new to DLC, like they only have had like one. And like previously mentioned, the confines of the Pizzaplex, If it was something simple like mini games or multiplayer possibilities, I could see it, but the game was already $50. Add on to that the $25 or so that the DLC would run for, and you have the price of some of the highest end games, especially new games. So if there isn't enough content to justify that, I'd be worried about the future for the series, especially since we don't really know the motivations of the person taking over next, because we don't know who is taking over next. It's a slippery slope with a cash grab DLC, and honestly, if there's not enough content or mystery to justify the purchase, I'm probably not going to be purchasing it. Despite being a FNAF tuber at this point. Yeah, that's what my life has come to. God damn it. In at 10, Foxy's return. Foxy was also missing along with Bonnie this time around. However, with the inclusion of Roxy, who seems to be like the Sephora version of Foxy, we didn't really seem to miss them all that much, especially since Roxy also runs hella fast, basically just being a gender-swapped form of the lovable Fox. However, seeing Foxy make a triumphant return could be an interesting concept for a DLC. Maybe he was having a form of like lover's spat with Roxy, and then that's why she keeps telling herself that she's beautiful and the best because Foxy broke her heart or something. I don't know. I don't think that they would do that just because of all the horrific fan art that it would generate. Like, yeah, of course there is already fan art about this, but having it confirmed as canon would make everyone go absolutely nuts. God, I'm actually shaking at the thought of that. That sounds like a horrible idea. Anyway, lots of fans have already modded or put Foxy into the game some way or another, so clearly it's an in-demand idea. And honestly, if we did something like the whole missing animatronics showed up for a full-on battle royale with the new ones, I think that would be epic as hell. Freddy Mech for the win. In at 9, Arcade Conspiracy. That's right, I'm talking about this again. The Arcade Conspiracy gets its name from one of the lore duffel bags that we can find, where we learn that something else seems to be going on here. I'm gonna keep making that joke every single time. Quote from the Arcade Conspiracy note. Exit interview. They are working together, the arcades. They're hiding something. The glitches. Glitch them all at the same time. Then the princess will recognize me. She's testing me. I am not yet worthy. The others are protecting it. Let me stay. I am so close. Just one more night. Please. I can save the princess. Now it's clear that this seems to be referring to the Princess Quest games. However, it doesn't seem like we have to glitch out those arcade cabinets in order to get their ending. We just have to beat them in order from 1 to 3, and then boom, we save Vanny. So what could this really mean? Well, there are 3 other arcade machines that seem to be having mysterious glitches, or there's something wrong with them as well. The Balloon Boy World game that you can find in the secret room in the theater, Chica's Feeding Frenzy, which won't turn off even when unplugged, that you're supposed to be able to find in the bakery, and the Monty Golf A arcade game that is, according to its duffel bag, shouldn't be in the mini golf area, but somehow is. However, while you can play both Balloon Boy World and the Monty Golf game, Chica's Feeding Frenzy isn't actually playable. You can only access it using a mod menu that lets you cheat it in from the main menu. So, adding in this arcade cabinet could mean that there's something bigger going on here than a simple DLC, which honestly I would love. And currently my my high score is still 14 for Monty Golf, where the lowest score is 13, so still feel pretty good about that. In at 8, VR. I don't care how many of you are against it, I am actively hoping that, like how Help Wanted got a flat screen version, that Security Breach will get a VR version, or port, or whatever you want to call it. Is it likely? No. Do I want it? Yes. This game was pretty fun normally, okay? But in VR, I think that this would be one of the most intense and exhilarating VR games that I've played. Aside from Blade and Sorcery, but that's just because it awoke something within me. Some of the cutscenes would need to be modified, probably by giving us a third-person perspective instead of the normal first-person. But other than that, I think it would be incredible. Like, imagine playing Phaser Blast in VR against Mommy Chica. Bro, all the Vanny simps would let themselves get killed. And then I could have some fun walking around as Freddy, pretending to be invincible and punching animatronics. I really want this, okay? It may be complicated to do, but I'm willing to wait, damn it. But exploring the Pizzaplex in VR is kind of goals. I know that there are like VR chat and rec room maps that let you do this, but they're not the real deal, man. Combine this with some of the other ideas on this list, and oh boy, would it be an amazing experience. Whoa, doggies. I know that they said they wouldn't do it, okay, but Scott says a lot of stuff that he doesn't mean, so. And at 7, Secure and Neutralize. Now, the secure and neutralize concept comes from Knitter user the Silver Sea, and how they describe it is basically a pacifist route, where instead of playing through the story and destroying the other animatronics, you'd instead be able to befriend them and remove them from the game, basically. At certain points in the animatronic boss fights, you'd be able to choose whether or not you commit to the destruction of the animatronic, and if you choose not to, the pacifist route would start. After choosing not to kill, you'd strategize about how to take the animatronic down, which would already be determined in the story, but like for story purposes you'd have to figure it out. Maybe Freddy would offer a suggestion. Then you'd remove the CPU that Afton is using to control the animatronic out of their back, and the animatronic would reboot. After rebooting, they'd have no memory of what happened, and then you'd be able to lead them back to Rockstar Row and put them in their changing station or green room for the rest of the game. This concept is actually pretty interesting, and if you want to read more about it and get more in detail that I can't actually get into in this video because it's a top 10, the link for this will be in the description if I can remember. If not, yell at me in the comments. And at 6, Daycare Redo. The Daycare Redo DLC concept comes to us from FNAF wiki user Glitched Morals, saying that they came up with a side quest with benefits called the Daycare Redo. Quote from the post, here's how it works. Instead of being pushed out of the slide when attempting to go back into the daycare after being banned, there is an option to talk to the son. Gregory can apologize for breaking the rules and ask if there is anything that he can do to make it up to him. Son will send Gregory on a few missions to do certain things, like bring back a certain item to him or clean up the play structures that he knocked down. They will need access to a cleaning or janitor pass, which can be obtained from a present box. And if Gregory does all of these missions, he will have Son's trust back, which will result in a few benefits. He will have full access to the daycare again, which will have extra secrets and collectibles to actually have the full access be worth it. Play structures are now new hiding spots for hiding from animatronics. You'll have access to a new room that is the daycare storage room. In that room is extra structures and toys that are found in the daycare. Presents and duffel bags will also be in this room. Son will give Gregory a daycare night pass, which will result in the moon no longer chasing Gregory anymore even when the lights are off. And Son can be interactable, and with him Gregory can watch different movies in the Fast Theater, play hide and seek, and other mini games. Honestly, this seems like a pretty solid idea, and actually a pretty interesting one, so good job, Glitched Morals. The link to this post will also be in the description, if I can remember. Halfway through into number 5, multiplayer. Now, with a working Pizzaplex, there comes the idea that doing this with friends would be an amazing time, and honestly, this is one of the things we've been wanting for ages. When a multiplayer FNAF didn't really make sense before, a working Pizzaplex would make the most sense. Being able to explore the Pizzaplex during the day with friends and even random people online would be awesome. And honestly, if this isn't in a FNAF DLC, I'm sure someone's going to make this happen in VR chat or Rec Room or something like that. I mean, like, there's already a mod, but that's where you play as animatronics, and I just want a whole load of kids running around the Pizzaplex, you know, being able to play all the games. However, if this was in the real FNAF game, I think it would be the most beneficial. However, VR chat is a free game that you don't need VR to play, despite what the name would suggest, so it would be better for fans, unless this came out as like a free DLC of some sort. Which honestly, considering how the game was released unfinished, a lot. A DLC that fixed things and then actually gives us multiplayer would actually be nice if it was free, especially if it's just fixing issues, okay? Anyway, a multiplayer Pizzaplex would be perfect. And at 4, daytime mode. Being able to explore the Pizzaplex during the day is something that I think we can all agree we'd love to see. Being able to actually play these games without the ominous threat of death would be a great addition to this game. I want to play laser tag without having to worry about Chica chasing me, okay? Unless she's chasing me in a romantic way because someone wanting me that bad is kind of goals. But for real, the ability to just mess around the Pizzaplex during the day would certainly be fun. No restrictions, just full passes or whatever. Or maybe we have to earn tickets to pay for the passes by playing the various arcade games. I think that would be pretty damn cool. Combine this with the multiplayer mode and this would be crazy. Although I guess multiplayer mode would kind of imply that it's during the day since the story doesn't really allow for multiplayer. So let's just assume the daytime mode would just be you on your own. The single player daytime experience, which sounds like a really bad sitcom. Like not one that's so bad it's good, but just like a bad sitcom. Mostly because of the name. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Burn Trap. With everything that was left up in the air about Burn Trap's ending, us being unsure whether he's actually dead or if the blob decided to save him, Getting to see more of Burntrap or even more of Burntrap's story, maybe some explanations as to what happened in between the games, or maybe even some potential backstory to the character of William Afton would surely be greatly appreciated by the community. If there's anything that I've learned by talking about this series every day for a year, the community doesn't like talking about any theory that isn't what they've already believed to be true, and they'll consider these theories canon and proven despite them not actually being confirmed. So, literally anything getting confirmed about this character would be a win in my eyes, especially if we finally get to see William officially die on screen. You have no idea how much I would love to watch William finally kick that sweet bucket on screen. Huh. Better than any orange YouTube video ever. But ultimately, in at number 2, Inspector Gregory. Bonnie was missing from security breach, having been destroyed most likely by Monty, but perhaps getting to investigate Bonnie's disappearance and being able to change how things go with the security breach lineup would certainly be an interesting mission. If we were meant to truly investigate this, turning the DLC into a bit of a detective game, I think that would be a really compelling and fun storyline. And from what I've seen, we all want justice for Bonnie, especially since we want Papa Freddy to be reunited with Bonnie since he seemingly really misses him. Considering the dialogue from the first recharge station at least, when Gregory asks about Vanny, and Freddy says, "There is no bunny in this pizzaplex, not anymore," in a very somber way. Plus, I've seen enough animatronic alligator thirst traps on TikTok that I kind of want Monty gone. Yes, it was only the one thirst trap, but it was for Monty, okay? It's rough, man. Well, okay, there was only one for the actual animatronic. There was more for cosplays of the animatronic, but dear God. And finally, in at number 1, Choose Your Guardian. I'm pretty sure you all wanted this, and I'm pretty sure it's the thumbnail for this video. Currently, the Choose Your Guardian concept is the most popular idea for a security breach DLC. Well, at least from ideas that came from fans. The idea behind this was that you'd play through the story again, but this time you'd choose which animatronic would come to defend you instead of Glamrock Freddy. The post on Reddit by user Space Bear suggested Chica and Roxy, with Roxy carrying you instead of hiding inside her stomach. However, unfortunately, I don't think that this idea is very likely. Despite jokes in the Help Wanted DLC that the DLC was not a canon addition to the game and it had no hidden intent or purpose, this was not the case. We know that the DLC is canon and had hidden intent and purpose. However, this DLC, the Choose Your Guardian DLC, would cause too much chaos to the story to actually work well. It would just make too many things confusing, and there is no way that they would make a non-canon DLC in my mind. But I do like this idea, and I think that it should be a mod. We can probably make it work in some way, I'm certain of it. You'd need the voice lines, but I'm pretty sure there are some fans that would be able to recreate the voice for the mod. Getting the actual voice actors would probably be a little too expensive for a mod, but yeah, unfortunately I don't think this is very likely, but hey, maybe it's a good mod. In its end, mini-games. I think that while yes, mini-games in the context of this game don't really make sense, a separate area that could perhaps take place before the main game, during that day, would be interesting. Where we explore the Pizzaplex while it's in day mode, and something like that would be really cool. Being able to actually see the entire Pizzaplex without all those damn security bots and, the risk of death. And we'd be able to play all the various minigames too. We could play the golf and laser tag and bowling and do whatever we actually wanted to do. It would be incredibly fun, and honestly, combine this with the next number and we'd have one hell of a game. Plus, playing Gator Golf on an arcade machine is totally different than playing golf on the actual Monty course. I don't think the two courses are the same, which is unfortunate because the one in the actual Monty Golf area looks awesome. Kinda want that in real life, if I'm being honest. Is there one of those Golf with Friends? Is there a custom map that is the Monty Gator Golf from the Pizzaplex? Because I'd play that. I don't have any friends. In at 9, multiplayer. Now, with a working Pizzaplex, there comes the idea that doing this with friends would be an amazing time. And honestly, this is one of the things we've been wanting for ages. While a multiplayer FNAF didn't really make sense before, with a working Pizzaplex, it would make the most sense. Being able to explore the Pizzaplex during the day with friends and even random people online would be awesome. And honestly, if it isn't in a FNAF DLC, I'm sure someone is going to make this happen in VR chat or Rec Room or something like that. However, if this was in a real FNAF game, I think it would be the most beneficial. even need VR to play in, despite what the name of the game would suggest. So it would be better for fans, unless this came out as like a free DLC of some sort. Which honestly, considering how the game was released unfinished from what I've seen and heard online, a DLC that actually fixed things and gives us the rest of the game better be free. It better just be like an update or something. Still, multiplayer Pizzaplex would be perfect. And it 8 achievements. Now don't get me wrong, this game has plenty of achievements, and some pretty damn difficult ones at that. But seeing some more wouldn't be a horrible idea. I mean, it would give achievement hunters and completionists more to do, and it would give the YouTubers who've already done the game to death more to play. Which, let's face it, it will help everyone in the long run, okay? Creators will have more content to film, Scott will have more eyes on the series for whoever's taking over next, and fans will have something to watch while we just try to ignore the millions of different tasks that we actually have to do instead of watching YouTube. Plus, it'll make it worth the $50 price tag even more. I feel like it's basically a guarantee that if we do get some form of DLC that will be adding content, we'll also be getting new achievements, because like it's basically impossible to avoid that unless this DLC is just fixing what's broken and not actually anything new. Hopefully we get something new along with some bug fixes, but maybe they're taking the Skyrim approach to this so that 10 years from now they can release a FNAF Security Breach Anniversary Edition while they take 25 years to make the next FNAF game. I'm not salty at all. And it's 7 fixes. Okay, I think it's safe to say that everyone who has played this game, either online or on their own, has experienced some form of glitch. Or most likely, multiple glitches. Markiplier experienced so many that there's actually a compilation of every time he ran into one. MapHat ran into glitches, EddieVR and Juicy ran into glitches, even I did. I ended up glitching myself back into the daycare for crying out loud, not even intentionally. And not to mention the whole a load of areas don't like to load. And the animatronic AI, let's face it, isn't the best. So I think we're due for some bug fixes. And while they may have updated things a bit to improve the performance, I just played it last week and had some serious issues. So I think that if we're getting a DLC, especially one we may have to pay for, that we are going to need some bug fixes. Although there is no way that we should actually have to pay for these bug fixes. Hell, we shouldn't even have to pay for a DLC if it's just putting the rest of the originally intended game into our game. But I have a feeling that we are going to have to pay for that. And at 6, new ending. While yes, we already do have a canon ending to the game, I feel like there are other things going on, alright? Having a canon ending doesn't discount additional endings from being added, since they could help indicate to us what's going on in this game, or give us something else that could just be a fun thing to achieve, like a joke ending of sorts that gives us something to laugh about. Like if we got an ending that ended up just being the ending from FNAF 1, or Henry's speech from FNAF 6, just something fun that would also make sense, since if it doesn't, we all know for a fact that we would go absolutely ballistic and tear it to shreds. Or maybe we could get an ending where William Afton actually dies, even if it's not the canon one, so I can finally sleep soundly at night. Like, they have the death animations, right? Like, might as well put them to good use. Plus, him dying could be like my alarm in the morning, or like the lullaby I play to fall asleep, as long as it's not a jump scare noise. Because waking up to a jump scare may be a good way to make sure that you don't go back to sleep, but I'm kind of off the whole self-torture thing for the sake of everyone else. Yeah, been there, done that, no thanks. Halfway through, and at number 5, confirmation. Now, we have had a lot of theories about the various aspects of this game, but with all the conflicts, we know that there isn't really going to be a way to solve this without more information. So, what's really the deal going on here, alright? That question is preferably going to be answered if we get a DLC. I mean, Scott himself said that he likes to explain any misconceptions with games in the next one. He did with FNAF 4's date and the sister location code of 1983, and with FNAF VR's DLC to show that Glitch Trap was intended to be William with the purple car in the FNAF 4 house. So, we could reasonably see some confirmation of some ideas in a Security Breach DLC. Preferably the question of what's the relationship between Vanessa and Gregory, or if Gregory is meant to be a robot and or crying child. Those are probably some of the biggest questions that we really have and would help us solve some of the other issues. Because let's face it, how William came back yet again is of little consequence, and so are various other questions. The biggest ones that we have are about the pro and antagonists. Plus, I just want to be able to say that I've been calling Gregory being a robot for years. Actually, no, it's more like a year. Ever since the Funko statue came up. Okay, I called it. In at 4, Bonnie. Bonnie was missing from security breach, having been destroyed most likely by Monty, but perhaps getting to investigate Bonnie's disappearance and being able to change how things go with the security breach lineup would certainly be an interesting mission. If we were meant to like truly investigate it, that is, like turn the DLC into a bit of a detective game, I think that would really be a compelling and fun storyline. And from what I've seen, we all just want justice for Bonnie, especially since we want Papa Freddy to be reunited with Bonnie since he seemingly really misses him, considering the dialogue from the first recharge station, when Gregory asks about Vanny and Freddy says, "There is no bunny at this Pizzaplex, not anymore," in a very somber way. Plus, like I've seen enough animatronic alligator thirst traps on TikTok that I kinda want Monty gone at this point. Like, yes, it was only the one thirst trap, okay, but it was for Monty! That's rough, man, I don't need that, one is too many. Oh, why do we live in a world where animatronic alligator thirst trap makes sense? Getting close to the end in number 3, post-game saving. Please, for the love of God, let us save the damn game after we beat it. Especially if the DLC has some decent story to it that involves us probably dying a bunch. Because I would rather not have to go through the whole 8-hour game again just to be able to play the DLC and be able to save. That's kind of insane. This is one of my biggest issues with the game. I get that it was for balancing purposes, but for real, this is something that needs to change. Freddy's power isn't even that good, so that alone can balance the whole he can see everything issue. Because his battery, even with the 2 upgrades, is trash. So for the love of God, please update the game to allow us to save or make it a feature in the new DLC. Even if it's like an option that we can enable in the menu or settings or something so that it can be our decision. Because I'm horrible at games, so I need to save. Especially since we can't save anywhere. Okay, we have to go to specific places to save, so that helps balance it too. Please. And ultimately, in at number 2, Chica's Feeding Frenzy. The arcade conspiracy gets its name from one of the duffel bags that you can find where we learn about something else that seems to be going on here. Quote from this arcade conspiracy note. Exit interview. They're working together. The arcades. They're hiding something. The glitches. Glitch them all at the same time, then the princess will recognize me. She's testing me. I am not yet worthy. The others are protecting it. Let me stay. I am so close. Just one more night, please. I can save the princess. Now it's clear that this seems to be referring to the Princess Quest games, however it doesn't seem like we have to glitch the Princess Quest games in order to win. We just have to beat them in order from 1 to 3 and then boom, we save Vanny. So what could this mean? Well, there are 3 other arcade machines that seem to be having mysterious glitches as well. The Balloon Boy World game that you can find in the theater, well in a secret room in the theater, Chica's Feeding Frenzy which won't turn off even when unplugged that you can find in the bakery, and Monty Golf a arcade that according to its duffel bag shouldn't be in the mini golf area, but is. However, while you can play both Balloon Boy World and the Monty Golf game, Chica's Feeding Frenzy isn't an arcade cabinet. You can only access it using a mod that lets you cheat it in from the main menu. So adding this to the game could mean that there's something bigger going on than a simple DLC, which I would love. And finally, in at number 1, level 10 security access. Now, the highest level of security access that you can get is level 8. This just requires you to do every one of the little security room minigames. However, with level 8 being the highest you can actually achieve, it begs the question, why are there doors with level 10 security? Because if it's impossible to achieve, what's the point of giving them a security level at all? There are plenty of other doors in the game that are locked or out of order that don't open at all. So why not just make the doors that would have been level 10 just unopenable, okay? That seems more efficient to me. I don't have to walk up and get a giant thing on my screen that says level 10 access required. But, like, the thing is, they could be saving these areas for a potential DLC that would end up having to add 2 more security passes. Since if you actually end up no-clipping through the doors with level 10 access, there is nothing behind them at all. It would be nice to get some additional areas in a DLC, and like, a separate area seems a bit unrealistic. This isn't Skyrim where you can add like a whole new world space or a dimension, so these level 10 areas would give us that extra sense of new content while also expanding the Pizzaplex in a reasonable way. We'd need 2 more security minigames though, which would have to be in additional areas, but I mean, hey, I'm willing to take that. And at 10, non-canon. A lot of people were suggesting a simple fix that would have all of this make sense, and it would be just to make the DLC non-canon. And honestly, I don't think that that's even possible. Even if expressly stated that it was non-canon, after the last DLC claimed that it was nothing more than a festive holiday-themed add-on with no hidden intent or purpose, and then giving us a whole load of hints towards the next game, none of us would trust Steelwool or Scott when they said that. No matter what, okay, we would still consider the DLC probably canon. And maybe that's something that we could actually deal with, since after all there is only one true ending to the game, assuming this doesn't take place before or after the story and we still play as Gregory in the game. So maybe this would actually still be possible, but any endings we end up getting wouldn't be the true ending still. And maybe the true ending would be impossible to get without Freddy. I mean, we could just play through the game until 6 AM and then be forced to leave and not have the option to stay. And at 9, new kid. The DLC could easily be explained away by making us play as a new kid who ends up getting stuck in the Pizzaplex for another reason, which would also explain why we aren't being protected by Freddy, who at this point would have run away with Gregory. They could have rebuilt Roxy's Raceway or maybe just have it off limits, and we could play through again using another character as our guardian, at least if they wanted to keep it canon. It would also show us that what Gregory fell into was intended on being a trap, hence maybe why Vanessa was sus of Freddy, but then after he gets out of parts and service, she doesn't dismantle him again, since that would make Gregory trust him. This could have been how all the children went missing, and this would have shown us that. But Gregory was the first one to make it out alive. This idea came from YouTube user Dank Meme in the comments of the Choose Your Guardian video, and that's where most of these ideas actually do come from, but if they're suggested by multiple people, I can't really show all of the comments. But from what I saw, Dank was the only one who suggested a new kid in a rebuilt pizzeria. And at 8, Sun and Moon. Multiple people were also saying that if this was a thing, they would want the sun or moon animatronic to protect them, which is just a whole new level of trauma. Like, that thing needs like a talking to by Chris Hansen or something, cause it's a creepy, like the fact that he will actively pick this 4-year-old sized kid out of a ball pit and then keep dragging you back to the same spot so you can't leave him is just a whole new level of crazy. Like, I get that he's an animatronic and he's not really capable of being a pedal bear, but like, come on. You have to admit, this guy has some creeper vibes, and I'm not talking creeper aw man vibes, I mean like prison predator vibes. Like, why would you want this thing to protect you? I guess we have to protect our investments, but like in this context, that's absolutely terrifying. Plus, Sun and Moon doesn't really have a reason to leave the daycare, and when they're in their moon form, they just want to put you back to bed. Okay, damn, I didn't actually realize how really creepy this thing was. I mean, like, his first words are naughty, naughty boy. So it should have been a dead giveaway. And at 7, Bonnie Bowl Battle. I mentioned last time how Freddy doesn't really have a section for a boss fight, since most of the Pizzaplex is named after other characters. Roxy's Raceway, Chica's Mazercise, Monty Golf, etc. But a few commenters had the idea that maybe Freddy could have his boss battle inside of Bonnie Bowl. I'm guessing because he was mourning the loss of Bonnie. I mean, it would kind of make sense, but the bowling alley doesn't really have much of a boss arena vibe. It doesn't really have the ability to house a boss battle, seemingly. Like with Monty, the boss battle made sense, at least in FNAF's way of making sense. But Freddy in a bowling alley? How are we gonna stop him like that? Get him to step on a bowling ball and fall backwards? I mean, it took Monty falling off a catwalk and getting smacked in the face by by a giant bucket for him to actually get destroyed. So how would a bowling alley with no net full of hanging bowling balls actually be able to help us beat him? I don't know. It's a nice idea, and I like the thought process as like an homage to Bonnie, but I unfortunately don't think it would work. And at 6, Disguised. YouTube user Canis Rufus Lupus I like that name. YouTube user Canis Rufus Lupus suggested in the comments that instead of hiding inside the animatronics or riding on their shoulders, that instead Roxy and Chica could throw disguises over us in an effort to conceal our identity. As they put it, quote, "My suggestion was that Gregory would follow closely behind Chica or Roxy in disguise when you're controlling them. Chica would toss a cupcake blanket over the boy's head with eye holes, while Roxy would stuff the boy into a giant foam finger that says you're number one. The security robots would be blind to him," which I think it's actually a really interesting idea, and that would certainly make for some hilarious moments. Like, imagine Roxy lifting up the cupcake blanket randomly while you're just like chilling with Chica, and then boom, you're done for. But also, this would kind of defeat the whole like power mechanic that they added to kind of nerf the whole glam rock mech thing in the first place. So I unfortunately don't think that they would go with this seemingly absolutely amazingly hilarious idea. But good thinking, Candace. I'm proud of you. That's outside the box. I like it. Halfway through into number 5, Guardian Vanessa. The idea that Vanessa could be your guardian is interesting, but considering how she is also the main antagonist, you'd be left alone for various parts of the game, which I mean is already the case with Freddy since he can't enter places like the West Arcade, but since, thanks to the CDs at the end of the game, we know that Vanessa knows there's something going on with her and that she knows Glitch Trap is watching, I don't really think that she'd try and help us in any scenario. Like hell, if she was really trying to do her job, she would have opened the gate at the beginning of the game and then went on the intercom to tell us to get the f*** out. Plus, she locks us in the lost and found room, or security room, or whatever it is, knowing full well that her other half could take over at any moment and come after us. And look what it does. It takes over her and comes after us. She also says that she called the cops, but she clearly didn't. So I don't think Vanessa would be down to help us, unless she was doing it to try to be selfless when she's being controlled. But even if she was, Afton could take over and then just grab you instantly, so... In at 4, Custom Night. An idea brought to us by commenter Barbarian Goose. Quote, if anything, Steel Wool should add a custom night where you choose your guardian as like a little fan service with the main DLC. And I think that this could be a good idea. Not making the DLC revolve around that, but maybe making a small section where you play as another animatronic guardian. Or, but maybe they each get you out before the doors close at 12, or something similar so it wasn't the full game again, because if it is the full game, it's not a small section. Because if we're being honest, like having to do this again for the whole game would be an absolute nightmare, and they already released the main game unfinished. So I think that a small section of story without the open world thing would be a nice way for fans to understand what would happen to the story if the various characters were our guardians instead of Freddy. Or maybe even as like a nightmare segment or something. Like if you choose to leave the Pizzaplex at the end, instead of just getting killed by Vanny, we'd also have a nightmare about if one of the other animatronics was guarding us. Maybe an unplayable cutscene or a small playable section, just to make the fans who want this idea to happen happy. But again, it would increase the whole Gregory writing Foxy art just a little too much in my eyes. Getting close to the end in number 3, Phaser Blast Battle. While some people were saying that Freddy's boss battle would be at Bonnie Bowl, others suggested a battle at Phaser Blast. There, you happy I said it right for once, but I like saying Phaser, so leave me alone. Which does kind of make sense, since it's seemingly the only location aside from the Pizzaplex itself to really be connected to Freddy directly. And while you do have to go there for the story as well, I guess it's possible that they add a boss battle in here instead of playing the normal Phaser Blast game. Like, you know, like how they had it when like Chica was running through there, but instead this time it could be Freddy and we had to handle him. It wouldn't be as awesome of a fight as Freddy would really deserve, but it would kind of make sense given that it would really feel like the animatronics were trying to stop you. But it would really make one section of the game easier, just like if this battle was in Bonnie Bowl. Since we have to go here for the story, getting the Phaz camera would just be easier in the long run, since it doesn't end up in a boss battle. In my opinion though, the Phaser Blaster is better, so maybe it would be a way to balance the game easier. In number 2, character endings. I feel like the concept of additional endings was already obvious, but I did see multiple comments suggesting character-specific endings, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, in the end, there would still only be one canon ending, so maybe this kind of DLC wouldn't really do much harm. But with everyone reading into everything so much, I still think that this would cause more problems than it solves, like I said earlier. However, the character's specific endings, while not being the canon ending, could help provide more insight into the canon of the actual story. Like if Monty's ending revealed a bit about what happened to Bonnie, or if Roxy ends up breaking down emotionally or something. I don't know how she contributes to the main story. And I think that Chica's ending would just be her getting all the pizza of her dreams. And of course, having me by her side, the man of her dreams. I don't know why all of you are suddenly like so for Roxy, but Chica's my main girl, and I'm not letting anyone take that away. Not even you, narrator, alright? you guys can have the self-centered, egocentric Roxy, because that's not the Afton virus doing that. That's just the personality of the animatronic. So you can deal with someone who loves the mirror more than they love you, and I'll be with someone who loves pizza just as much as I do. It's called priorities, okay? And finally, in at number 1, Roxy's hair. Now, an overwhelming amount of comments were saying that Gregory could hide in Roxy's hair instead of chilling on her shoulders. But they didn't know how he would hide in Chica. So I figured it was a worthy number 1 spot. I mean, like, Roxy does have long hair, right? Well, yes, but the thing is, I see multiple issues with this that just make this idea seemingly impossible to me. Firstly, if Roxy's hair is meant to be like actual flowing hair and strands in universe, there would be nothing for Gregory to really hold on to unless he was holding onto her neck or something, which would be an interesting mechanic, since if you're around the other animatronics for too long, maybe they'd see Gregory's arms or feet poking out from behind you. But also, have you ever had hair in your face? Whether it's dog, a significant other, your own, having hair in your face is one of like the worst feelings ever, especially if it's unwanted. And Gregory wouldn't want that, assuming that he isn't simping for Roxy like all of you nasty motherfuckers are in the comments, okay? Y'all are simping harder than Will Smith. That's all if her hair was actual individual strands, but looking at the gameplay, it doesn't seem to be. It's multiple different seemingly plastic long triangles that end up making up her hair, and I doubt that you'd be able to climb inside that without cutting yourself up more than Afton in a spring-lock suit. So unless they just didn't want to simulate Roxy's hair physics, I don't think that this is possible. Unless you are all saying this because it's like a kink thing, which is unfortunately very possible.